What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the PFF NFL show. Trevor, Sikkema, Dalton, Wasserman here for you guys. All but one game in Week 5 of the NFL season is complete, and we got some grades to release. We got some PFF grades to release for every single game as we go over our most disappointing, our most impressive, and of course the stat that told the story from the game. Dalton, how you doing, my friend?
Fantastic. Another fun weekend, huh?
It was. This was a weekend that just had crazy upsets all over the place. Even if you go like to college football, like it just felt like a weekend that was going to be a lot of fun. And there's a lot of different storylines to break down, right? I think we talked last week that when you get into this point of the season, we're 4 or 5 weeks in, now we start to see trends. And again, just like the league always does, once you think you know something, then all of a sudden a team's going to come in and totally surprise you and give you their best game or their worst game. And we're going to talk all about it and which parts that we think are real or not. Before we get into the grades, and if you've been watching this show before, 1, welcome back. 2, what we'll do is we will give you the top 5 graded players for every single game that we saw on Sunday. And we'll go back to Thursday Night Football as well. If you want to see the grades yourself and so much more, head on over to PFF.com. Get yourself a PFF Plus subscription. Also, just so you guys know, we're doing in-game grades now as well, where as the games are going on, you guys can check out our live grading of these games, and you'll be able to look at it for the entirety of the game and then a little bit after the game as well before it gets locked, and then it goes through the review process, and we come up with the official PFF grades as that goes through reviews and checks. But just want to let you guys know that if you don't have a PFF Plus subscription, go ahead and get into it. All right, speaking of getting into it, let's get to our first game. Let's talk about Sunday Night Football, right? I think that's the game that a lot of people are talking about on all sorts of television programs everywhere. Let's get in on it as well. I want to hear your take. The Cowboys win this game at the very end. Come down, miraculous drive at the end. It was a bad game from the Cowboys, I feel like, for most of the performance. But hey, they had the drive that mattered at the very end. Let's take a look at the Cowboys' top 5 graded players from this game. At the top, we got cornerback Jordan Lewis earning an 85.5 overall grade. Then it's guard Zach Martin, a familiar face to this top 5 here with a 82.6 against the Steelers. Chauncey Golston, number 3 with a 77.1. Wide receiver Jalen Tolbert with a 72.4. Running back Rico Dowdle, I know you're going to talk about him in a little bit, 67.3. And then Dak Prescott, again, not a great game from Dak Prescott, but man, that last drive was good when it needed to in a low-scoring game at 67.5. We flip over to Pittsburgh's side of things. Elandon Roberts with a 93.7 grade, and what you were talking about before we hit record, almost the play of the year, which I know you're going to break down a little bit. Edge rusher Nick Herbert with a 91.0, edge rusher TJ Watt with a 90.3, defensive tackle Cam Hayward 86.2, and then number 5, running back Najee Harris with an 81.1. Justin Fields, not his best performance so far this season with a 59.1 grade in this game. You know, I almost... Who won the game doesn't really matter. I think it was very up and down by both these teams. I'm wondering, what is your biggest takeaway here? What is the stat that told the story of this game?
For me, it's Dak Prescott and even Mike McCarthy coming into this game and handling it like the veterans they are, right? They've been around a long time. They've seen a lot of football, and they know that sometimes your offensive line can't always help you with an elite pass rush. So the quarterback has to help himself, right? And I think Dak Prescott, you could see from the very beginning, the plan was to hit that third step in his 3-step drop and get rid of the football, okay? Under 2.5 seconds preferably, but I'm going to make the cutoff here at 3 seconds or less. There's essentially no room for him after 3 seconds against TJ Watt and Nick Herbig and Cam Hayward and all these guys, right, that you saw in that graphic, in the top 5 of that graphic. There's no room to hold the football. And he really didn't. He had 34 pass attempts in 3 seconds or less and only 8 with 3 seconds or more. Took 2 sacks in that latter scenario, 2 turnover-worthy plays in that latter scenario. 3 seconds or less, 26 of 34. 299 yards, 2 big-time throws, a 72.4 passing grade. Dak Prescott made a point. He wasn't outside of the touchdown. He did throw to Rico Dowdle, where he did have some space in the pocket to move to his right. He didn't have time to roll in the pocket. He didn't have time to run away from all the freaks that Pittsburgh has up front. He made the veteran plays, and he just got the football out. Even here and there at the expense of making the right read, it was better for him to get rid of the football rather than take 7, 8, 9 sacks on the night like we know the Steelers are capable of. So there were moments where it didn't look great. Both of his interceptions were pretty bad. Some sort of miscommunication with CeeDee Lamb on the first one, or a bad read with them playing off coverage and into a go ball in the end zone and things like that.
Yeah.
The overthrow to Joey Porter for the second one.
Right.
It was rough at times. Even when he fumbled, he held the ball. One of the few times he held the ball too long, he did fumble it, right? He got strip sacked. That's the danger of playing the Steelers. But at the end of the day, Dak Prescott's veteran presence and his ability to just make quick reads and get rid of the football, still, even through all of that, 26 of 34 on balls thrown in 3 seconds or less. That was the plan, was, you know what, we know we have two rookies up front on the offensive line. Zach Martin was cramping up during the game. This may be the hardest defensive line in football to block. Get rid of the football, protect yourself, give your team a chance to win, and at the end of the day, they got the ball last, and that's what he continued to do all the way till the last drive. You didn't see too many forced shots that gave the Steelers too many turnovers. There were two bad ones, and that's why his grade wasn't spectacular, but it was good enough to get the win in a close game, and Dak was pretty clearly the better quarterback in this game.
Yeah, look, I think that when you look at Dak, I think a lot of shows are going to just, talk about touchdowns, yards, everything like that. 2 big-time throws, 3 turnover-worthy plays, which you mentioned, which goes into I don't think this was a great Dak performance. Now, he had the one drive, right, where it mattered the most. And I think that is important in a game that sort of gets into my stat that told the story, and that is the fact that it only took one drive at the end because the Steelers' offense is not potent enough to win football games regularly in this league. It feels like we always talk about Mike Tomlin in the record, right? The 500 record. He's never below 500. But there have been a couple of years where he's barely above 500 or just 500. The thing is that he's too good of a coach. The floor is too high, but the ceiling also sometimes seems lower than it needs to be. For me, the fact that the Cowboys even had a chance to win that game in the end comes down to the fact that the Steelers are just so slow on offense. When you look at the Steelers' offense this year, 3 points that they scored last night in the first half, just 3 points. And they're only averaging 6.4 points in the first half. That's 31st in the NFL going into this week, that is. So it's just the offense, it's overall not super explosive, but it's the slow starts specifically that keep these teams in the game, and it's just they're wasting too much time. Now, we've seen a couple of games in the past where Justin Fields is able to really turn it on in the second half, and the offense is able to turn it on in the second half, and that's great, but you can't be wasting this much time with the way that it feels like the Steelers are. It almost feels like they're treating the first half on offense like, all right, let's see what the other team's going to do, and then we'll kind of, adjust, get into the second half. And sometimes that could work, but other times, like last night, it really bites you because you just cannot come out of the gate and just make a statement immediately. It's what makes the Washington Commanders, the Minnesota Vikings, these teams that just come out and score immediately, they set the tone for the game. And there are a handful of things that I think the Steelers need to work on offense, and we'll kind of get to that in a few minutes. But overall, I think the stat that told the story is the only reason why the Cowboys were in a spot where they could win the game at the end is because the Steelers could not capitalize on things specifically in the first half, and they haven't been able to do it all season long.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And look, it does. It takes two to tango. And the Cowboys' defense played really well, too, better than they've played in any of their first 4 games, right? And I think the Steelers, this is just where they are right now. This is their identity, especially last night being shorthanded without Jalen Warren, without Cordero Patterson. And let's be real, they only have one legitimate wide receiver on their team right now. I don't know if Roman Wilson, when or if he's going to play, but outside of George Pickens, and Pickens took forever to get a catch last night, they just don't have enough in their passing game to drop back and throw the football. So they have to stick to their identity to win games. Their identity is defense and winning games like this, and even them, they had a 4-point lead with 20 seconds left. They kind of got it sort of where they wanted to, but Prescott in the end was just a little bit better. And I think I feel the same way about the Cowboys, where as opposed to their defense and Mike Tomlin, Dak Prescott gives the Cowboys some sort of floor of like, okay, they're not only going to win 4 or 5 games this year because at least they have an above-average quarterback, if not better, right? Some days he's better than that. This is 2 weeks in a row to me that Prescott, his veteran presence basically just won them games when they got mostly outplayed, even against the Giants. They got outplayed in a lot of aspects in that game.
I agree.
Having the quarterback that they do, and I know Prescott takes a lot of heat when the Cowboys lose, but he's the reason. He's really the sole reason they've won these last 2 games. Getting rid of the football, his ability to read coverages is better than most of the quarterbacks in the league. I wouldn't put it number 1, but it's up there for as long as he's been in the league. What is it, his 9th year in the league now? You're seeing just that veteran presence and leadership getting them through some hard times. But as slow as the Steelers were on offense, if the Cowboys defense plays like this a little more often, they stand a better chance than the way they played the first 4 games.
Certainly, because how they played the first couple of games of the season was horrendous, right? I mean, like, they couldn't stop anybody from running the football or anything like that. So I think that is a little bit better. And again, you hope that the floor that Dak Prescott gives you can definitely help in that area. We're going to get to most impressive, most disappointing in this one. My most impressive, amongst the defensive line standouts that you have every single week where, it's Cam Hayward, it's TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith when he's healthy, Keanu Benton's obviously coming along too, part of this defensive line, but Nick Herbig, man, it's just been so impactful. He was really a rotational guy, a designated pass rusher type of a player. Now he's had to play more snaps. This past game, 78.6 pass rush grade, 22.2 pass rush win percentage, 4 pressures in this one, and a 90.0 pass rush grade this season thanks to, 2 weeks ago, I think. We put him on the list, but he ended up, I think he played like 21 snaps or something like that.
Yeah, I threw him on there because he just had to.
We had to be because 2 weeks ago, I can't remember who the opponent was, but he had like a 93.8 pass rush grade. He was unblockable, and last night, again, he was absolutely cooking. So I'm not saying this to take away from the greatness of Cam Hayward or TJ Watt, but that defensive line just has it figured out. They are coming after you at all different angles with all different types of players, and Nick Herbig is a very efficient one there for the Steelers. Who was your most impressive in this game?
I actually like Rico Dowdle, and I know his overall grade was only a 67.2, but that's dragged down pretty heavily by that fumble in the end by just an incredible play by Landon Roberts, shooting from the 6 yards deep in the end zone like a heat-seeking missile at the 1 to force that fumble. That would have been the play of the year had the Steelers recovered it. But Rico Dowdle, look, I think the other thing needs to be said on this offense is, was it great? It wasn't great, but the Cowboys at least got something out of their run game, especially in the second half of this game. 20 carries, 87 yards, 6 forced missed tackles, and he caught a touchdown, a really nice catch on a touchdown on what wasn't the best throw. This is what the Cowboys need. They need to be average, at least in the run game. At least they were that in this game. Dowdle was really good outside of the fumble at the very end, and that's a wacky play that he'll never see that again in his career, most likely, with a play like Landon Roberts made. But this is the balance. They just need enough balance. They don't have to lead the league in rushing. They're not gonna. Yeah. That's the point. But for them to get this sort of production out of Dowdle in their run game against this defense with 2 rookies on their offensive, that's all they need. Just a little bit of balance to help out the passing game that when it's on can be really, really good.
My most disappointing in this game is the Steelers' wide receiver splits. Basically just how they are using their wide receivers at all whatsoever. Because when you look at the snap counts from last night, Van Jefferson played 47 snaps. Calvin Austin played 44. George Pickens only played 34. So Mike Tomlin gets asked after the game, hey, was Pickens hurt? What happened? He's like, no, we just rotated him. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. The answer's not really good enough. Now, Mike Tomlin is one of the best that we have had over the last couple of decades, maybe one of the best coaches ever at like dealing with the personalities within his locker room over the last 15 years to just get those guys to come together as a team, because that is an underrated part of being a head coach is just these players with all sorts of different personalities, and everybody's ultra competitive. You don't get to the NFL level if you're not ultra competitive, and you're trying to make them gel as a group. And it's very difficult to do, and I feel like Tomlin is a great leader in that regard, and he's been able to do it. I don't know what's going on, if there's something going on behind the scenes. Tomlin says there isn't, but I don't know how George Pickens isn't by far, without question, no matter what, your number one played and used wide receiver, because before this game, Pickens had actually in this game, still with only 34 snaps, he had by far the highest threat percentage of any wide receiver on this team. You know why? Because when they need yards, they have to go to George Pickens. So why is he playing 10 less snaps than the other 2 wide receivers that are there who don't even have anything close to the production? On the season, Pickens has a 25.8% threat percentage, which shows you how much he is used. Again, no other wide receiver is even close to that. I don't think there's even a wide receiver that's within 10% of him in that regard. Roman Wilson continues to be a healthy scratch. I don't know what's going on there, because I thought Roman Wilson was sort of the cavalry for this team to come in. But how the Steelers are utilizing their wide receivers right now is disappointing to me, because at this point, we've said this before on this show, it's basically the George Pickens show in the passing game for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now you're limiting his snaps. You already can't score. You're already averaging one of the lowest first half point totals in the NFL. Now you're going to take your best player off the field? I don't know, man. That was disappointing to me to see how that came about. But what's the most disappointing for you?
And look, if they're going to win with the conservative approach that they're using and they continue to use and sitting Pickens for whatever reason and all of that, they're going to have to run the ball, and they didn't do that either in this game. 27 carries for 92 yards total. Their running backs, when they were handed the ball, got 0.3 yards before contact on average. Just nothing happening up front.
Yeah.
Again, Warren and Patterson out doesn't help. Najee Harris, we've seen it can kind kind of come and go with him. He had a good game last night, actually, but it's just not explosive in the run game either. And I think the biggest problem is we're still having this issue with Troy Fautanu hurt right now, maybe for the entire season. Offensive tackle, Dan Moore Jr., a 50.4 run blocking grade. Broderick Jones, a 42 run blocking grade. And I think that second one is really discouraging. I know it's something we've talked about a lot with Pittsburgh and their offensive tackles. Now it's even at more of a premium with James Daniels out for the season inside as well. And I was impressed with Mason McCormick at right guard. I thought he played a nice game at right guard in his first start, but offensive tackle continues to be a problem for this team. And especially when you're an outside zone team like this, like Arthur Smith is, or, we talk all the time about the 49ers and Trent Williams, or the Lions and Penei Sewell, and these outside zone teams, especially, the Shanahan type offenses that have these elite offensive run blocking tackles. Steelers don't have that, so they can't get to the edge. They can't even threaten the edge right now because they're just getting beat at offensive tackle. If they don't figure out this situation, and they may not, it's going to be these two guys because Troy Fautanu is going to be out for a while. He's uninjured reserve. If they don't figure out this thing at tackle, we have no evidence that says it's going to be better because last year it was the same pair for the majority of the year, and it wasn't any good in run blocking last year. So I like where Zach Frazier's at. I like what Mason McCormick did in his first start. It sucks that James Daniels got hurt. The interior, though, is pretty good. They have to figure this out at tackle. Either they're going to play better or they're not.
Right. Let's move on to the next game. We had a London game, an overseas game, a 9:30 a.m. game, Eastern time, that is. If you're on Pacific time, you got up early for this one. Jets-Vikings. I know you got words to say about your New York Jets here. Vikings come away with the win 23-17. Let's take a look at the Vikings' top 5 graded players from this game. Offensive tackle Brian O'Neill is at the very top of this list with a 90.9 grade. He had a fantastic performance, as did the veteran Andrew Van Ginkel, their edge rusher, 85.0. Linebacker Ivan Pace Jr. continues to be someone who was overlooked in the draft class. Drafted on day 3. Not really. What?
Undrafted.
Oh, he did go undrafted.
Didn't get drafted at all. He's one of the great undrafted steals of the last decade.
That is so ridiculous that my brain cannot remember that because you're not the first person to remind me of that. But I thought it was, look, he's not built like an NFL linebacker. I understand. But he was so insanely productive, especially as a blitzer at Cincinnati. It blew my mind that he did not go drafted, which could, again, you're not the first person to correct me on that because my brain cannot compute it. Anyways, he's number 3 on this list, 79.2. One of the best pass rushing linebackers, inside linebackers, I should say, in the NFL. Safety Cam Bynum with a 76.1. Linebacker Blake Cashman with a 72.9. Sam Darnold, not his best day. 47.9 grade in this one. We flip sides to the New York Jets. Linebacker Jamian Sherwood. No CJ Mosley in this one, so Sherwood had to step up. 90.3 overall grade. Cornerback DJ Reed with a 78.8. At number 2, Elijah Vera Tucker, their guard, 79.3. Garrett Wilson at number 4 with a 76.8, And then edge rusher Solomon Thomas with a 74.7. Aaron Rodgers in this game, I would say not much better than Sam Darnold, but literally not better than Sam Darnold according to our grades. 46.4, but both quarterbacks struggling in this one. Stat that told the story here, Dalton. What is it?
All right, you mind if I just wrap this in most disappointing all in one because it's just all the same thing?
I was going to say you're not allowed to just say Robert Saleh, but go ahead.
Okay,
if you're gonna get into a whole speech thesis here,
it's
go
a
ahead.
whole thing.
Yes.
So it's similar to what I told you last week about just not being prepared to start the game.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, here's my stat: their first 12 plays, even beyond with the 2 interceptions, I get it. 2 interceptions is awful. Pick 6, Van Ginkel, that whole bit. Their first 12 plays, they had 19 yards. They're just never. They're never ready to play in the first quarter, ever. And look, here we go. Their offensive grade ranks this year. First quarter, last in the NFL. In quarters 2 through 4, the 13th. They're a good offense for the rest of the game.
Yeah,
first quarter, dead last. All right. First drive of the game. First drive. Maybe you come out in the first drive, you play well. 30th, third worst in the NFL. First 15 plays. Okay, a theory. Here's the scripted plays. Right. Every coach writes up 15 plays. Dead last in the NFL in offensive grade. Just even the first play of any given drive, the drive starter, right? We talk about, you want a positive play. You want 6 yards on that first. You want a good first down play, get in a rhythm, right? 29th. They just don't set themselves up for success at all. The beginning of all of these games, win or lose, even the Tennessee game and the New England games that they won, the first quarter is just an issue. It's been an issue since this regime has been there. If it's Mike LaFleur, if it's Nate Hackett, Robert Saleh's the constant and all of it. There are 3 things, the 3 things here that you have to do, okay, that you need to win and lose football games, right? There's talent. You can win and lose with talent, okay? Sometimes you're just better than the other team. We're going to get into a couple games today where one team was just better than the other one, right? That's on the GM, okay? There's execution, okay? Going out there and doing what you need to do. That's the players. There's preparation. That's on the coaches to get your team prepared, to execute, right? Those three things. You need all three of those things to win. And to me, it's that last one. It's preparation, where the Jets, it's just not there. And they continue to go out there and do the same things. Their offense right now, and I know Aaron Rodgers, he didn't play well. No, he didn't. But against what right now is an elite team, how do you expect him to go out there and play well against this defense, against Brian Flores, with no plan at all? And every week it's the same thing. The first play, they have two tight ends on the field, and one of them motions, and they run inside zone that way with the motion. It's the same first play every week. It's the same package of plays every week. And then we get to a point in the game where it's like, oh no, we're behind again, and it's just their offense right now is just Aaron Rodgers trying to will them towards the end zone. There's no plan, there's no scheme. I would argue it's the most vanilla offense in the entire league. If I looked at motion things, if I looked at anything right now, and the biggest problem, as it's been for 3.5 years with the Jets, not just this year, the first quarter. Why do they call them quarters, Trevor? Because there's 4 of them, and they seem to not know that the first one you play football in. I'm serious.
They're not the only team. I just mentioned the Steelers. And we're going to get to another team.
They're not the only one, but they are the premier team that does not play in the first quarter. They are the team. Last 30th, last 29th. Anything I could think of in the first quarter, they're last in, especially offensively. And look, and I listen. I said it to somebody else earlier in the week. If you have all the pieces on the field that you need, talent-wise, and you're still failing, it's not an on-field problem. At least not on Sundays. What are they? Every single week it looks the same in the first quarter. I just want to, I would honestly want to know what they do during the week. That they come out here when they just had a bad loss, right? You have a huge game against the Vikings. And a game they still could have won. There's a lot of people that argue they're more talented than the Vikings. The Jets have a boatload of talent. And they go out there in the first 12 plays, they have 19 yards.
Yeah.
And it's every week. Even in their wins in the first quarter, it takes so long to get the ignition just running that they don't give themselves. Then you fall behind a good team like this. You're down 17-0. Honestly, I don't even feel that much of a need to talk about anything in this game after the point where it's 17-0, because that's the Jets.
You can't spot a team 17 points.
No, and it's a normal occurrence. When I look at, they're down 17-0 early. They had 19 yards in the first 12 plays. They still had too many penalties, especially in the secondary this week. It's actually, and they didn't run the ball at all. It's actually a normal day at the office. It's not any different than any other week. This is actually a normal week. And, the score shows, they only lost by 6 and Rodgers and this and that. But, like, your 40-year-old quarterback having to just will you through vanilla schemes into a win against a really good team doesn't work. So I most disappointed. It's Salah and it's Nathaniel Hackett. There's just nothing here. On top of the fact, they have Breece Hall and Braylon Allen. They're last in the league in rushing.
Well, okay, so this is a good transition into my stat that told the story and most disappointing, because I'll wrap it in as well, because both of those statistics for me are for the New York Jets as well. Vikings fans, we know that you're watching this. We'll get to the most impressive, which is what the Vikings did, because we both have Vikings on that list. But, kind of what you're talking about, not being able to establish yourself not only early in the game, but early in the drives, goes into just going into this week. They had the 9th most third down attempts in the NFL. They're putting themselves in third down situations. They're behind the 8 ball constantly. So they're like they're fighting for, some offensive coordinators fight for first downs. Other offensive coordinators fight for third and manageable. And it's like, the goal is to get the first down. The goal is not to... The
goal is to score points at the end of the day. As efficiently as you can.
And I'm not saying that every play that you have to run has to be beyond the sticks. There's a flow to things and setting things up. And again, putting yourself in manageable situations is important. But I think that Adam Gase, not to bring up other bad Jet memories, but Adam Gase was... It felt notorious for, okay, I just want to set up third and manageable. No, you want to get a first down. That's what you want to do. And it felt like he just really didn't want to do that. And it felt like not specifically his first down plays, but his second down plays were an indicator of that. You're not even trying to pick this up. You're just trying to get to 3rd and 4. It's dude, call something that can get you a little bit further. So anyways, Jets on third down. I wanted to mention they had the 9th most third down attempts going into this week. So your stat sort of complements that. They were 5 for 17 on third down in this game, 29%. That's not good. Now, the rest of the season, I want to give them their props. They were third in the NFL before this past week, 46%. So they've been able to convert. But everything looks so difficult on this offense. Everything looks so difficult. And I think it's a lot of things, but I wonder if an element of this really is Rodgers. Because there was something that was sort of going around Twitter, Instagram, whatever, where last week Baker Mayfield, I think, went on a podcast and he talked about how different the locker room was, or like players in the Tampa locker room tell him like it was different when Brady was there versus when he is there. With Brady, it was like, the quote, I'm sorry, I'm trying to like remember this to explain it correctly. The quote that Baker basically had is, there was pressure at all times with Brady. Now, it worked out because it forced everyone to be better. There was a lot of pressure because it was like the MJ thing in The Last Dance, where he's like, I don't care if I wasn't your friend. We were winning championships. That's what it takes to win championships. And even Brady, after he heard Baker Mayfield's comments, was basically like, said the same thing that MJ did. He's like, I played the game a certain way. We won championships because of it. And he's like, I don't regret that at all. I wasn't going to hold your hand through it. I was going to be the leader that I needed to be. I was going to get in your ass if I needed to, and we were going to be a better football team because of it, and we were going to win championships. And they did. And that's a way that you can win. With Baker, it's a little different. With Baker, it's like the camaraderie. There's not really this pressure. They're playing fun. They're playing free. Both ways are successful in the NFL. But right now, getting back to the Jets, it looks like everyone's nervous. It looks like everyone doesn't want to let Aaron Rodgers down. The head coach, the offensive coordinator, the wide receivers, the offensive line, the running backs. It looks like everybody's just really tense. I better not screw up.
That's just the Jets. That's why the Jets have been in a 15-year playoff drought, because they feel this pressure that really shouldn't be there. But I'll tell you something though. I'll tell you something though about Brady and the Bucs though, is that you had Bruce Arians, a very notoriously old school coach when it came to stuff like that with Tom Brady. They were in sync on that. I don't think Rodgers and Saleh are in sync on the attitude of this team.
It doesn't feel like
I don't. I'm not really sure what type of attitude that Saleh wants to have. I think from what we've seen on the field for 3.5 years, it's the same thing like you said with kind of like Pittsburgh. Let's get to the fourth quarter and let our defense win the game. And I don't think they have an idea of like, hey, you could win these games early because you have a Hall of Fame quarterback and all these weapons, right? It's not this. I think Rodgers would love to go out there and be aggressive and get a 14-point lead like they did against New England and do all that, right? But I think there is a disconnect. I think there's a disconnect, and I think there is this. This is just the hard part of being the Jets, because now you've got the longest playoff drought in North American sports. And there is pressure just to make the play. It feels like there's a Super Bowl level of pressure just to make the playoffs.
No, sure.
Just to win 10 games, because they've had so little winning in their franchise. I think Rodgers has tried to come in and change the culture, but you need your head coach to be in sync and enforce that. And I don't know that that's happening, because everything at
things are going well, but they're not going well.
Everything at the beginning of these games is too lax. I don't know what they.
I think it's too tight, man.
I mean,
I think they're like, okay, we got to run this because I feel like this is what we're supposed to run. Like this is how we set ourselves up into like third and manageable.
They've been like this for 3 years already, though.
All right.
Even before Rodgers, it's been even with Zach Wilson, and I know Zach Wilson was real bad, but like even with bad quarterbacks, come out with a plan. They look like they have no plan.
No.
I don't know what the identity of this offense is. If you're last in the league in rushing and Rodgers is out there just trying to force it now.
Also, I want to say this, and I don't know if people are going to kill me for this. If Devontae Adams is on the Jets, they win this football game. I think they win this football game because the style of play that they want to have here is that their wide receivers are in single coverage and tight coverage so much. And Rodgers is like, I'll put the ball where it needs to go. Just catch the football. And that obviously like works. Sometimes he does, sometimes he doesn't. It's not like he's 100% perfect, but we've talked about nobody's better at the back shoulder fade, right? Like nobody's better at just like putting it over the defender with single coverage. He puts the ball exactly where it needs to be and expects the wide receiver to run underneath it, whether there's a corner hanging over him or not. He puts it where it needs to be. If you have Devontae, this team's 51.3 receiving grade as a team versus single coverage. Devontae Adams' grade against single coverage this year, even just this year, 75.5. they win this football game if they have Devontae Adams because, in my opinion, they convert a couple more of those fourth downs, and that allows them, even with the offense that's exactly the same.
And they get just enough to do it.
Now,
But it's still not sustainable the way that
problem for the Jets.
Right.
But if they want to play this brand of football, the way that we're seeing them play, if you don't go trade for Devontae Adams, I don't think it works to the level it needs to for you to make the playoffs.
I agree with that.
So, my most disappointing, just real quick, Jets run blocking as well. Breece Hall, negative 0.6 yards before contact again this game. That means 3 out of the 5 games that Breece Hall has played this season, he has had a negative yards before contact average. The most he's ever had in a single game so far this season is 0.4. So it's bad. They just cannot block for one of the weapons that they really want to go to, being a run blocking team. My most impressive. Can we get to the Vikings? I know the Vikings fans.
5-0.
I was going to say, I know Vikings fans are like, stop talking about the Jets. We won the football game. You did. You're 5-0. We've talked about the Vikings a bunch already this season. It's been an unbelievable job by Kevin O'Connell and Brian Flores. My most impressive, Vikings offensive line continues to impress me every single week. Now, it wasn't their best game this past week because I think the Jets' defensive line is still fine, but 72.3 run blocking grade as a team, 64.8 pass blocking grade as a team, but it just felt like, especially early on in the game, they were able to set the tone because of their offensive line. So it really impresses me, not only what the coordinators are doing, but what the offensive line is allowing them to do as well. Who is your most impressive?
For me, it's a guy I've had, I think, for the second time in 5 weeks, Andrew Van Ginkel. Just a gamer. Just, again, does everything that Brian Flores needs him to do. 3 pressures in this game, 76.4 run defense grade with a run stop. The pick 6 early that set the tone for the whole game, dropping off. The one guy to drop off is 0 blitz. And again, it just shows the difference in preparation between the two teams. That pick 6, they're lined up in a 0 look. It is a 0 coverage, but he's the one guy that drops into the exact hot window they knew was coming. Ball's thrown right in his chest. Scores 10-0 right there. So I think Andrew Van Ginkel, a 91.9 coverage grade, second pick 6 of the year.
Yeah.
Weirdly against both New York teams, so he just knows what he's doing against those two.
King of New York.
He was one of my favorite free agent fits for the Vikings, and this exact defense and everything he can do. Andrew Van Ginkel's a tone setter. He set the tone in this game. He's an incredible football player, and he's in a perfect defense for his skills.
Spent a lot of time on that game. I figured we probably would.
I'll take the blame for that.
Some emotions and some debates would come up, but I thought that it was a needed conversation with where the Jets are and what they showed us yesterday morning. Let's get to the Bills and the Texans. Oh, man. Okay, well, we're going to get to another one where we probably have a rant here. The Houston Texans end up winning this game 23-20. So let's talk about the top 5 graded players for the Houston Texans. Danielle Hunter, their top graded player here with a 76.4. Wide receiver Stephon Diggs with a 75.2. Linebacker Henry To'o with a 75.1. Derek Stingley Jr. with a 74.9. And then Will Anderson Jr. with a 74.1. C.J. Stroud in this game, he had the highest grade of anybody, but we separate quarterbacks here on the show to make sure that we can point them out for every team. 80.6. You flip to the other side of things for Buffalo. Edge rusher Dwayne Smoot with an 85.3. Center Connor McGovern with an 84.0. Linebacker Dorian Williams with a 78.2. Daquan Jones with a 77.2. And the Christian Benford with a 76.3. Don't see this number very often next to Josh Allen, at least not anymore. A 48.1 overall grade for this performance here. What is your stat actually, you know what? I'm going to start with the stat to tell the story because it's a good transition there from Josh Allen. My stat that told the story is how Josh Allen played under pressure in this game. Josh Allen has been pretty dang good under pressure.
The best.
Over the last 3 years specifically, right? Since he has had his renaissance, I am now Josh Allen, type of evolution from what we saw at Wyoming and in the early couple of years that he was with the Bills. Versus pressure against Houston yesterday. 15 dropbacks, 13 total passing attempts. 0 completions. 0 against pressure. 2 turnover-worthy plays. He had a 26.3 passing grade. That's the third lowest single game performance under pressure that he has had since 2021. Josh Allen just does not play like this under pressure. And even if you get a little bit better from Josh Allen, let alone like what you can normally expect from him, they probably win this game, right? They only lose it at the end because, we'll get into the late game management in a second. But that, to me, is the stat that told the story. The floor for Josh Allen was lower against pressure than it has been over the last 3 years. And that was very, very surprising how he played because normally you pressure this guy and he turns into a gem. He's the reason why you win football games. And He just was not that at a historically bad level for Josh Allen standards, certainly over the last 3 years. So that, to me, was the stat that told the story. What about you? What do you got?
All right, so twofold here with the passing game, okay? Because for me, game plan of the week goes to D'Amico Ryans and Matt Burke on their defensive staff for the Texans. Look, who coming into this game, easy question, who coming into this game was the Bills' best receiver against man coverage?
Who's the best Bills receiver against man coverage? Nico.
No, for the Bills. Easy question.
Khalil
Shakir.
Okay,
the guy who was out.
I thought you were trying to trick me.
Nope.
I thought you were trying to trick me.
Not at all.
Sorry,
I needed the obvious answer on that one.
Right.
I just felt like having you participate. So, Khalil Shakir out for this game, right? The Texans running not every play, obviously, but more man coverage in this game than they usually do. And even when they didn't go man coverage across the board, you saw some half-field concepts where they would match up on one side and go zone on the other, depending on formations. But they went with a lot more kind of single coverage scenarios with their secondary, rightfully so, because I think they're learning how good Derek Stingley and Kamari Lassiter are as a pair.
Sure.
Okay?
Yeah.
Bills wide receivers in this game had 3 catches for 76 yards and a touchdown. The Keon Coleman touchdown where Lassiter missed the tackle. The one play, basically, their wide receivers made all day. Okay, 2 other catches from Mac Hollins. The Bills were charted. Okay, our quarterback charting charts receiver separation as well. Open on only 11 of their 26 targets in this game. Okay, 0 for 6 on deep balls. Josh Allen was 1 for 14 on balls thrown 10+ yards downfield. The one completion to Dalton Kincaid on an in route. Okay. The lack of, this was the game, I think, last week it was more of a case of like the Ravens just didn't give up explosives. They were sitting back. They were like, yeah, fine, throw it 6 yards. Go ahead. This was a game without Shakir in there where we finally got the fear of like, oh, the Bills don't have like that guy. They don't have Stephon Diggs, ironically. This was the game we found that out because it was just the Texans gotten a lot more man coverage and match coverage where they were winning every battle one-on-one down the field. So, yes, Allen was bad. Definitely. Absolutely. What did he finish? Like 9 for 32 or something crazy? Like I've never seen a number like that.
Was it 9 for 30? What was it?
It was something somewhere in that range. It was like 9 for 30. 9 for 30 in this game. I mean, that's rare. And part of the reason it happened is when I tell you nobody was open, nobody was open unless the Texans busted a coverage, and I think 2 of those 9 completions were on a screen. So you think about 7 real completions on the day. Nobody was open all day long. Coleman broke a tackle, got a long touchdown, got him back in the game. That's the only play any Bills receiver made all game. This was the game that people feared when they traded Stephon Diggs. It's this game, is they just don't. And even though the Coleman play got him back into it and the game ended the way it did, this is the first reason they lost this game is because they fell behind and they had nobody getting open at all. And when they fall behind, they couldn't run it more with James Cook, which they were effectively doing. They need Khalil Shakir back in the worst way. And it feels like a weird thing to say, honestly.
What about most impressive for this one? Before we get into most disappointing, because I know we got another rant to get on. Most impressive.
Go to the other side, C.J. Stroud. There are times he gets in this – he reminds me of Peyton Manning. Sometimes I watch him and I'm like, that's Peyton Manning. There's times he gets in this rhythm. Okay, there's 4 big-time throws in this game, 331 yards. Nico Collins only played the first quarter. I think he left the game after his big touchdown, right? And he's been the best receiver in football this year. C.J. Stroud in this game, in rhythm, 14 for 17, 242 yards, 3 big-time throws, and a 91 passing grade. There's just times when he gets hot and he really sees the field in that 2.5 seconds. Good luck. There's no stopping him. It reminds me so much of Peyton Manning because there were stretches of games you remember all the time when you could like almost feel it in the air that Peyton Manning would get hot and there was just no stopping him. He was about to complete 15 balls in a row. That's where C.J. Stroud is right now. And that's to me, especially early in this game, that's where he got. And then his sense of situational football.
Yeah,
it's just awesome. He is so far ahead of his years. As a second-year guy, it's ridiculous. I don't even look at him as a second-year guy. That's one of the smartest quarterbacks in football, and the way he sees the field, it's just unreal.
I mean, you talked about Dak, that veteran presence that he had, and that floor for him over the last couple of weeks to at least be able to win you some football games. CJ Stroud's floor, it feels even higher than that. Like CJ Stroud's floor, a bad game at the office for CJ Stroud is still one that can win you football games every single week. So he is truly putting on a clinic. I'm glad that you shouted him out as the most impressive. My most impressive, I'm going to go with linebacker Azeez Al-Shaair for the Houston Texans as well. 61 snaps in this game, which is tied for the most of anybody on the team. 75.3 run defense and had 8 tackles to lead the team. He was also spying Josh Allen. Like when we were watching the game, he was sort of like, he had that assignment of spying Josh Allen and making sure if he left the pocket, he was in his face very quickly. He was handling space very well as well, where sometimes like if you're the spy and you know, okay, there's a good chance where he might be able to pass it, or if there's somebody kind of coming behind me, you almost have to create a threat, right, where you want to make it so Josh is hesitant about taking off the run with it, but you can't completely blow the coverage that might be behind you of a guy who's maybe coming into your zone, or you might be able to help out. He just felt like he had a really good feel for being in that role yesterday, which is an incredibly difficult task against a player of Josh Allen's caliber. So wanted to shout him out as the most impressive here. Your most disappointing, before we kind of like tag team what the most disappointing overall is.
Got an FAU legend in there. Always loved that. And also a great play as the Tampa 2 hole defender down the seam. There was a play, I forget who he was covering, but he ran somebody down the seam and broke up a pass too. He was terrific yesterday. For me, disappointing. AJ Epinesa, you've got Von Miller suspended, obviously. You need someone to step up off the edge, and really Epinesa has to be the guy. But 31 pass rush snaps, just 2 cleanup pressures, a 3% pass rush win rate, doesn't fly at all. 50 run D grade, 39.5 overall grade. If they're going to get better on this defensive line, they really need Epinesa to be that guy across from Greg Rousseau right now.
The most disappointing, I think it has to be Sean McDermott and Joe Brady. Right. And however much blame you necessarily want to put on either of those guys, McDermott said afterwards when he was at the podium, like, hey, it's on me. I'm the head coach. That's clock management. And so anybody that sort of missed it, you know, what happened was the game was tied. You know, Buffalo gets the football. They force Houston to punt. So they get the ball at their own 3-yard line. So admittedly, not a good situation here. You're in a situation where I think there was less than a minute left. Houston had all 3 of their timeouts. So what McDermott was trying to do was stay aggressive to basically say, okay, well, if we don't pick up a first down, they're going to get the ball back either way. But, and you know, I don't want to be too, you know, I don't want to be too like revisionist history here, because we often ask our offensive coordinators and our head coaches to be more aggressive. I think we complain much more about a lack of aggressiveness than criticize when it happens. There's going to be a game that we're going to get to here with the Bengals and the Ravens where we're going to talk about the opposite. But it has to be a good balance, and it wasn't a good balance, I think, on either side. For the McDermott side of things, they threw the ball 3 straight times because they wanted to try to pick up the first down. And then when the first one went incomplete, well, then they thought they were behind the 8 ball. Now at the 3-yard line, we don't want to run it just because then all they do is take 1 timeout off the clock. Now we can't even burn all 3 timeouts for the team. So then they wanted to keep their foot on the gas and stay aggressive. You want to keep the ball in the hand of your best player in Josh Allen, but it was incomplete. Then you punt the ball to Houston, and then they throw 1 short pass with 8 seconds left, and they're able to call a timeout because they have a timeout to call. And in reality, in that same exact situation, if you would have run the ball 3 times, if you would have forced Houston to take all 3 of their timeouts, that play probably doesn't exist anyways because they're not going to have the opportunity to spike the football. And so it's tough to look back at it and look at those 3 passing calls and not think that they did not handle that correctly at all whatsoever. And McDermott said so, but it feels like it's a larger issue now with some late game blunders by McDermott that has happened over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I'll hit that in a second because I have the list of them here. Look. Actually, I think on those 3 plays, I don't think Josh Allen made the wrong throws when you look at the coverage and things. And the third one especially, was just that Will Anderson was in his lap in about a second and a half. I don't think Allen did much wrong. And I think, too, they have to understand the feel of the game. They were running the ball well in this game. They stood a better chance than trying to get 70 yards and get in field goal range right there. And if they were just trying to get 1 first down, cool. But you could have run a screen. You could have done so many other more conservative things to get 10 yards. I just think this is not news. Like, this is actually, the Bills losing like this is the least shocking thing of the day. Because this is what they do. Like, if you look at, let's go back, I'm going to go all the way back to 2021. Okay, I've got the list here. I had to make the list, okay? They lost a game to New England when there was 60-mile-an-hour winds and the Patriots threw the ball 3 times. Okay.
Not great.
They lost a game to Tennessee where they tried a QB sneak and Josh Allen's foot slipped, and there was some arguments as to whether they should have even ran that because it didn't work earlier in the game. We're still in 2021 only, okay? The 13-second game against the Chiefs. Famous. I'm going to be honest with you, that game, considering the rest of these I'm about to list off, that game is this regime's legacy.
Yeah.
It's the embodiment of Josh Allen does everything he can try to do to win the game, and in 13 seconds it unravels, right? Then you've got the Vikings game where Justin Jefferson makes the catch on 4th and 18 and they fumble for the safety. A Dolphin game where they had the ball for like 46 minutes and lost somehow. Last year's Chiefs game in the playoffs, but when, honestly, McDermott got bailed out by Jordan Poyer punching a ball out on the 1-yard line. Remember the fake punt at their own 30 that didn't work at all?
Yes.
If Jordan Poyer doesn't punch that ball out at the 1 and the Chiefs score, we look at Sean McDermott and the Bills a lot different. Offside on a field goal against the Broncos. Losing a game to Zach Wilson in week 1 last year. Blowing a lead against Mac Jones in New England when Josh Allen gave you a lead with like 90 seconds left. The Eagles game last year when everybody knew Jalen Hurts was running every play. And there are so many. This isn't news. And I hate to always just be like, oh, situational football that's the NFL. But the Bills, when they're on, they're dominant and they win by 30.
I know. It's hard to quit this team because
any close game they're in. No. I picked them to win the playoffs, but I know there's zero chance they're winning a Super Bowl.
No.
Zero.
But you predict them to get to the playoffs
because of Josh Allen, and then this will show up because it's shown up for 4 years. How many times do we have to do this before it's just not news anymore?
Maybe fifth.
I looked at the
Maybe sixth.
I looked at the way yesterday went, and
7.
I was mildly irritated watching again, and I was like, oh, that's what they do. They play great, or Allen claws them back into games, and they find a way to screw it up. I don't know why this is. It's not shocking at all. This is what they've done. That 13-second game against the Chiefs, that was 3 years ago. That's their legacy, and it will be because even Josh Allen with all his power can't break that. It's not anybody blaming Josh Allen. I know he was bad yesterday. This is a consistent thing. It just is. It's it's every year you're going to get 4 or 5 of these from the Bills, and nothing changes.
Patriots Dolphins. I had to end it on that.
No,
that was my drop.
You're
that
good.
was good. Patriots Dolphins. Next game that I want to get to here. Miami wins this game 15-10. This is an ugly game. This is a very ugly game. But hey, a win is a win is a win, as they say. Miami's top 5 graded players here in this game. Offensive tackle Teron Armstead at the top of the list, healthy and out there like they need him to be. 88.2 in this game. Running back Jalen Wright, their rookie there from Tennessee, 87.9. Tight end Jonnu Smith at number 3 with an 80.3. Guard Robert Jones with a 79.1. And then fullback, love a good fullback here in the top 5. Alex Ingold with a 77.4. Tyler Huntley in this one, obviously starting because Tua is still on the IR. 57.0 grade. On the other side of things for New England, their cornerback Marcus Jones with a 78.4. Offensive guard Michael Jordan with a 75.6. When I was referencing Michael Jordan and Tom Brady, obviously I was talking about this Michael Jordan.
Yeah, the Patriots. Yeah.
Wide receiver Demario Douglas with a 73.9. Number 4, Ramondre Stevenson, their running back, 73.5. And then edge rusher Anthony Jennings with a 73.5 to round it out. Quarterback Jacoby Brissett, 72.5. Not terrible from Jacoby Brissett. I know people are clamoring for Drake May. When are we going to get him? Or, on the other side of things, don't play him in front of this offensive line. What's this told the story here for you, Dalton?
It's honestly for this game, and of course you would know it with it being 15-10. It's just a severe lack of explosiveness on both sides, right? You got 2 teams that just can't throw it down the field right now. The Dolphins because of their quarterback situation, and the Patriots because of their whole situation.
Offensive line specifically, I think. That's a big one.
All of it. The whole thing for me. Dolphins were 0 for 4 on deep balls. You have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, but you can't get it to them downfield.
Hey, I'll get to why in a second, but go off.
Oh, yeah. And the Patriots, 2 for 7 for 46 yards. One of them was at the very last play of the game, was essentially a Hail Mary. It's 2 teams that lack explosiveness, and this was the type of not explosive game that it was going to be. There are obviously some plays on both sides that could have been made, could have done better, in New England had a real shot. They had a shot, and I'll get to that in a second too. But 2 teams that lack explosiveness played a very non-explosive game.
Yeah, and just overall execution, I think, is my stat that told the story on top of what you said about not being able to hit deep balls down the field. Red zone and third down, right? Those are 2 areas that we consistently look at because if you're performing very well in those areas, you're probably winning a lot of football games. And both these teams just don't perform well in this area at all. And it was, two bad offenses going up against each other. Dolphins in this game, 2 for 11 on third down. That was just 18%. And they were just 1 for 2 in the red zone. But they got that one, which is the difference here, because the Patriots were 4 for 13 for 31% on third down, but they were 0 for 2 in the red zone. That's basically just where the game was won and lost, is the one touchdown the Dolphins were able to get, and weren't able to get that from the Patriots when they were in the red zone, at least. My most impressive, though, getting to, hey, you got Tyreek Hill on the team. You got to be able to complete some deep passes to him. Christian Gonzalez stepped up in this game. 84.4 coverage grade for Christian Gonzalez in this one for the Patriots. He was targeted 11 times, gave up 5 receptions, but he had an interception and 2 forced incompletions. He was truly my most impressive in this, because most of the yards that he gave up in this game happened, I think it was the first series of the game. Tyreek Hill just kind of hit a comeback against him in off coverage, and it was like he was gauging Tyreek's speed, because as the game went on, especially in the second half, Gonzalez was much more comfortable playing press, playing in the hip pocket. And of course, in a foot race, he's not going to be able to keep up with Tyreek Hill, but he was able to be physical and subtle enough with him to bump him off of his routes, not get the timing right, not get a clean release off the line of scrimmage. I could not have been more impressed with what Christian Gonzalez was able to do against Tyreek Hill in a game that they knew they needed to, because Miami's offense just overall, and my most disappointing is literally just, I have in my notes, Miami's potential, because it sucks. I mean, this version of the team sucks. They're hurt along the defensive side, they're hurt along the offensive line, and they don't have Tua. Whatever you expected this team, Devon Achane was hurt, right? So whatever you thought that this team could be, injuries have completely derailed this team from anything close to whatever their potential was. And that just kind of sucks to kind of evaluate every single week. Now, should they be better than they are right now? Yes, I would think so, with a head coach like Mike McDaniel, who's been a good offensive mind in the past, but holy cow, it looks bad right now. And that kind of goes back into the Christian Gonzalez point. The Dolphins were, I think, dead last in EPA per play going into this week. If not, then they were bottom 3. A terrible offense. The cure for that? Get Tyreek Hill the football. Don't care how you have to do it, whether it's deep passes, short passes, let him get yards after the catch, horizontal stuff going parallel with the line of scrimmage. Don't care. Get him the football. And they targeted him quite a bit in this game. And Christian Gonzalez was up to the challenge. So that was very impressive for me. Who was the most impressive for you?
And real quick on that, I think that's part of the value of having Tua in there also, because there's so much stuff in this offense, especially pre-snap and all the window dressing. And when you're playing a guy like Tyler Huntley, who's been there for 3 weeks, it's hard to go back to all of the complicated stuff, right? You really, with a backup, you have to get simple and do the simple things right. So it is tough, and I do like that Gonzalez got to challenge Hill, right, in press and do that, because then what you say to the Miami Dolphins is you go, okay, go ahead, Tyler Huntley, throw it over the top, dare you. And they couldn't do it. 0 for 4, they couldn't do it. So it was the right game plan. And I do think, man, I'm telling Gonzalez is going to be really, really good. You really feel like he's going to be a Pro Bowler at some point here. Right. He's really good. He was off to a great start last year. But tell you what, this week I usually get on him. I have to credit the Dolphins' offensive line this week. I think a big thing, as I always talk about, was Teron Armstead was healthy and playing. He was their highest graded player this week. Makes the entire offensive line better. Those front 5, a 77.6 overall grade, only allowed 5 pressures on the day, and the team ran for 186 yards. That's a good New England front. Let's be real. The front 7 for New England's the best part of their team, right, as a unit. And this is a good front that they blocked all day. If nothing else, they ran the ball well, and they didn't let Huntley get hit too much. Did he make the throws? Not really, but they gave him enough chance. They got 15 points on the board. They grinded their way through what is a good front 7. I have to credit this Dolphins offensive line when I can, because in the past I haven't. And obviously part of that is the injuries and everything that's going on up there. But for one day, at least on this day, they played really well. They were the best part of this team for me.
Whether it's a TD, a tutty, taking it to the house, in for 6, whatever you want to call a touchdown, one thing is for sure, touchdowns matter more at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. On the ground, in the air, special teams, defense, don't care how they score them. We just want to bet on touchdowns, right? DraftKings Sportsbook is the #1 place to bet on touchdowns this season. If you're ready to place your first NFL bet, just bet on something simple like scoring a touchdown, right? We were just talking about the Bills. We were talking about how great CJ Stroud is. If you're looking at their schedule and looking at their matchup and you go, man, Josh Allen's too good. He's going to have a bounce-back game next week, and you think you know exactly who is going to score for them, go ahead and place the bet. New DraftKings customers, they bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. You score big with DraftKings Sportsbook, the #1 place to bet on touchdowns. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use the promo code PFF. That's promo code PFF for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. If you got a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, you can call 877-8-HOPE-NY or just text HOPE-NY. In Connecticut, help is available for problems with gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gambling resources, visit dkng.co/FTBALL. Colts and the Jags. Trevor Lawrence getting the dub on his birthday. 37-34. We love that. Yeah, I mean,
can't beat it. That's great.
You can't lose on your birthday.
Yeah. My birthday's always during the preseason.
You also can't lose wearing the throwback uniforms that the Jags are wearing.
That's true, too.
And those things are gorgeous.
Oh, yeah.
They got to go. I wish they would go back to those.
There's no way there's no way they could have been 0-5.
And I wish the Broncos would do the same, because both of those teams, if I got to take away from week 5, it's wear the damn throwbacks, because they're great and you're going to win. Jags win this one 37-34. When we take a look at the top 5 graded players for the Jacksonville Jaguars, guard Ezra Cleveland, 91.1 in this game. And then how about Trayvon Walker? One of the best games that he has had in his career. That is the highest mark of his single-game NFL career to this point, a 90.3. He was fantastic as a pass rusher as well. Wide receiver Brian Thomas Jr. Oh, it's all coming together for the young guys. Dalton in Jacksonville, 86.4. Linebacker Devin Lloyd with a 79.7. Then offensive tackle Cam Robinson with a 74.5. Trevor Lawrence in this game, 89.8. Love to see that. Unless you're a Colts fan. And for the Colts top 5s, their tight end Mo Alley Cox, he was the top guy on this team with an 87.7. Guard Quentin Nelson with an 86.0. Cornerback Samuel Womack with an 84.0. Cornerback Jalen Jones with an 80.9. Guard Will Fries, who unfortunately got hurt in this one and was placed on IR, 80.5. And then Joe Flacco. Is Joe Flacco elite? Well, this past week he was, because he got an elite overall grade, 90.0. Look at the quarterback play in this AFC South matchup. Sometimes you don't see it, but this time you absolutely did. What was the stat that told the story here, Dalton?
All right, so just a contrast real quick. Trayvon Walker had 7 pressures and 3 sacks, okay?
Yeah.
Do you want to know what the Colts' entire team had?
Less.
They had 1 pressure as a team.
No way.
1 pressure.
Look at the Jags O-line.
The entire day. Leatu Latu had the 1 pressure for the Colts.
Hell yeah, he did. Edge 1, baby.
That doesn't surprise me at all. But this Colts pass rush, look, you mentioned the Trevor Lawrence grade. He had a huge day. Brian Thomas had a huge day. The Jags offense, 37 points, all of that. The Colts pass rush was nowhere to be found. 1 pressure, a 17.9% pass rush win rate as a team. A 49 pass rush grade. Look, this season, this is a problem. Look, DeForest Buckner's hurt. There's other guys. Leatu Latu is legitimately their best edge rusher right now. He's their best pass rusher right now. And he's kind of coming along. And we think, obviously, he's going to be really good. That's why he was the first defensive player taken in the draft. But this Colts pass rush is down there with some of these other teams that we talk about that just can't. They're 29th on the season in pressure rate. They're 24th in pass rush win rate. They're 26th in pass rush grade. They have more sacks than you would think for a team that's in the bottom 5 or 6 of a lot of those things. They just don't disturb quarterbacks at all. I think it was last week was the only week that they really did against Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh's pass protection is kind of an issue. So,
right, talk about
that.
Right.
I mean, it's just a fact. I don't care what jersey you wear and what team you are. If you don't touch the quarterback at all, if you get 1 pressure all day, especially on a guy like Trevor Lawrence, you're getting nowhere. And the fact that Flacco kept them in this game, and it was as high scoring as it was, and Joe Flacco and Alec Pierce and all the big shots they were taking, they had to. If Flacco grading a 90 and them losing, that's rough. That's really, really rough.
Yes.
Because they just don't even touch the quarterback. They don't even get near him.
You're hoping that Flacco gives you like a 75 grade.
Yeah, and he's like solid. Oh, it's a good backup performance. No, Joe Flacco might have played the best game of his career yesterday, and they found a way to lose.
I don't know about that. He's had some great ones.
He's had some, it's regular season. We'll stay in the regular season for that. But, I don't know if we'll ever see the Flacco fling again. But you have to at least disturb the passer in some sense,
of course,
especially a guy like Trevor Lawrence, who had been so tough under pressure. It'd been really rough for him under pressure this year, but it doesn't matter. He was out there playing 7-on-7.
You know, what I initially thought that I was going to go into this game talking about the Jags passing the ball deep down the field, right? Because I talked about how this was a top 10 offense pushing the ball down the field last year. They were top 10 in PFF grade when they were doing so. They were top 10 in attempts. They were top 5 in completion percentage on big-time throws. It was what they wanted to do, which is why when they drafted Brian Thomas Jr., certainly after the fact, when I was doing more research on it, I liked the pick on draft night, but then after I found all that stuff out, I was like, this is what they want to do. They want to push the ball deep down the field, and I thought they were going to do that a lot more this season. They have, but it's been way too feast or famine for them. And so for this game specifically, when you watch Red Zone and you watch the highlights, while we were watching it live, I saw the big throw to Christian Kirk, saw the big throw to Brian Thomas Jr., and I said, oh, okay, they're really hitting the deep passes. Like, that's what I'm going to talk about with this team. They finally were hitting the deep passes. Dalton, they really weren't in this game. Their average depth of target in this game, 6.7. It was the lowest of any game this season. They only had 3 passes of 20 or more yards. Now, I named 2 of them right there. That was tied for a season low. They had 62.3% of their yards came after the catch, and the previous high was a 36.8. Now, that's where I want to kind of get into how the Jags offense was more patient this game. I think they didn't feel like they had to push it way deep down the field. Now, obviously, you're up on the scoreboard, you're hitting the big shots, so you feel like the game script is allowing you to do that. But I like that they were more patient. Yes, this is a team that wants to be more explosive, that brought in players like Gabe Davis and Christian Kirk and Brian Thomas Jr. to be more explosive, to push the ball down more vertically. But you can't take those shots every time. And I think they learned that the hard way, certainly over the second half of last season and then to start this season too. They allowed the game to come to them, and then they took their shots when it was available. The deep shot, the deep coverage for the Colts, it really was... It was a miscommunication for them in cover 3 with the Brian Thomas Jr. Touchdown. And then when it came to the Christian Kirk play, I believe it was the same thing. I believe it was either cover 4 or cover 3 where just the strong safety. Oh, actually, now I remember exactly what it was. It was a Mills concept. So same side of the field. It was a deep post paired with an in route, with an in breaker. So basically, if you are facing, and that's a cover 4 beater, because you have your outside cornerback and your safety. I'm trying to draw this in the air. So you have the outside cornerback and the safety right here. A Mills concept is the wide receiver is going up and they're going to run a post, and then the other one is going to run up and they're going to run an in. So essentially, with the post and the in, you're trying to create a conflict with a strong safety when there's 4 deep players in coverage. So the strong safety bit on the in route. And so then you have a really good angle on it with inside leverage to make sure that outside corner cannot keep up with the post route, and that's exactly what happened. So they waited to attack deep when the time was right. And that's what I love the most for the Jags, is that they were patient. And the rest of it, it was short, it was the intermediate. They were obviously the Tank Bigsby runs helped, but that's what I love the most about this game. To me, the stat that told the story is they didn't force the deep pass. But when the deep pass was something that they could call, they had the talent and they were ready for it. And I think that balance has not existed for this Jags passing offense for a long time, and we saw it this past week, and that's why I think they got the win.
Absolutely agree, and I think that's look, I've been begging for it for a month. I'm like, you'll slow this thing down. Like when they're playing the Browns and Trevor Lawrence, I think, had the highest average depth of target in his career. I'm like, this is not how you get deep shots, and they're not the only team doing this. I think it's what Joe Flacco's doing so well with the Colts too, is that he doesn't force deep shots. He'll take the intermediate ones and wait for the deep shots. Unlike Anthony Richardson was forcing them down. I see several teams doing this. The faster these teams figure out that you have to set them up. Look, Trevor Lawrence is capable of making any throw on the field. But it's the easy ones that win you ball games. Mm-hmm. Make the easier ones first. You mentioned Christian Kirk. This was the first game this year that I felt like Christian Kirk was really like an impact player.
Yeah,
because he's the guy with Davis and Thomas on the outside. Kirk is the guy that sets up those deep shots. He beats you 8, 10, 12 yards at a time, right? So I've been begging for this for Jacksonville because I think their offense can be really, really good, like enough to get back in a wild card race, but they have to play like this, and they need to play better defense too. But offensively, this is the formula. Swing for the fences when they're there. It's just, that's it right there. And you know what? Swing for the fences with Brian Thomas. I know a lot of
great. Man.
I know a lot of the headlines have been on that other LSU Tiger, the one for the Giants, who's
he's not bad as well.
He's pretty darn good, but LSU had 2 of them, and Brian Thomas, tell you what, 5 catches, 122 yards, the big touchdown, had another 25-yard catch that was called back on a holding penalty on the offensive line. 88.3 receiving grade over the last 2 weeks. The only player in the NFL better is Nico Collins. Brian Thomas has now been on that level, and that's the thing. It's the explosive speed, right? And it's not only the big play, but after that big play, then it's the threat of it, right? Then he can go out there and run a 12-yard curl, and people are bailing because they're backing off, right?
Yep.
And you can use him in different spots. Brian Thomas is one of those receivers who safeties, corners, whoever, they have to be aware of where he is at all times, or he's going to be behind them. And the threat of that, it's so symbiotic the way that works. Okay, we're taking too many deep shots. Let's go to Christian Kirk in the short ones. Well, now they're getting the short ones. Well, now Brian Thomas gets over the top. Well, now they're scared of Brian Thomas getting over the top. Controlling safeties and doing things like that in your passing game, this Jags offense can be really dangerous. And this game is the blueprint. It's that exact thing. Plus, you have Gabe Davis out there can run a 4-3 also. Mm-hmm. I mean, you got 2 home run hitters. You should be able to control safeties better than almost anybody with these guys. And then you have Kirk, and eventually, was Evan Ingram back yet in this game, or was he still hurt?
Evan Ingram, I don't think he played in this game.
Once he gets back, too, you've got Kirk and Ingram both working underneath, and Brenton Strange is off to a pretty good start to his season, too. But you can create this dynamic where you've got defenses moving back and forth, and then you've got Bigsby running the ball, and we'll see if ETN can get back into rhythm here, too. They have a lot of weapons to work with. This is the way their offense should look. Maybe not 37 every week, but they shouldn't look the way that they looked the first 4 weeks. This is more indicative, I think, of their talent level.
Speaking of deep threats, though, on the other side of things, Alec Pierce had a hell of a day. He was the most impressive for me. 3 targets, 3 catches, 134 yards and a touchdown. If you want to call him one-trick pony, I don't care. 3 receptions. Right, that's a pretty damn good trick there to get 134 yards on 3 catches for a touchdown. So he was definitely a most impressive candidate, as Joe Flacco was as well, but we've kind of already talked about him. Most disappointing for me before we flip over to year 2, Jag safeties. Just not a really good day. Obviously, when Alec Pierce is catching deep balls everywhere, all over the coverage. 44.9 coverage grade is unit. 5 plays of 15 yards or more credited against the safety group for Jacksonville. So just was not their best day at the office. They definitely need to be better within that secondary. Who's your most impressive and most disappointing?
Impressive is Brian Thomas Jr., just off to a great start to his career, and like you mentioned, a perfect fit for this team. Disappointing, the Colts. I've been saying lean on this offensive line and they'll be fine. It's a little banged up right now. Ryan Kelly was out for this game. Braden Smith the last 2 weeks hasn't played great, gave up 5 pressures and 3 sacks in this game. And that Will Fries injury is so tough to see because he was having such a great year. Look, at the top of the guard overall grades so far this year, James Daniels, who's unfortunately out for the year, Quentin Nelson, and Will Fries. It's the 3rd highest graded guard in football that they probably just lost for the season. It's really tough to see that because he was one of the breakout stars in the NFL, and I know he's a right guard for the Colts and all, but no, he was playing fantastic football. This is one of the best offensive lines in football, especially when they're healthy. It really sucks to see him hurt, especially playing such good ball. And I think it's going to be hard for them to replace him. Already missing Ryan Kelly for right now. They had the rookie Tanner Bortolini starting at center. And he did a decent job. But losing a guy like Will Fries, who was having such a breakout year, that sucks. I'll be honest with you, because this offensive line is really fun to watch when their front 5 are healthy.
One of the best games of the week, the Ravens and the Bengals. Baltimore wins this one in overtime, 41-38, and I have a deep sigh because 2 of our producers behind the glass are Bengals fans. Sorry, Quinn and Eli, but we got to talk about it here. We're looking at the top 5 graded players for the Baltimore Ravens as they won this game. Tight end Charlie Kohler with a 91.4, and then tight end Mark Andrews right after him with an 83.1. Linebacker Roquan Smith with an 83.1 as well. Nnamdi Madubuike with a 82.1, and then number 5 on the list, Zay Flowers with an 80.6. Lamar Jackson in this one, a little bit of an up and down day for him, a 69.5 overall grade. Flip sides to the Cincinnati Bengals. Wide receiver Jamar Chase at the top of the list with a 91.8. Wide receiver T. Higgins with an 85.6. Anytime that those 2 dudes are at the top, the Bengals scored a lot of points, as they obviously did. Defensive tackle B.J. Hill with a 78.2. Edge rusher Sam Hubbard with a 73.2. And then tight end Mike Gesicki with a 70.8. Joe Burrow in this one got an 89.4 PFF grade. Tight game, obviously down to the wire, ends up going to overtime. Division matchup, Ravens-Bengals. They've had some heated games over the last 4 or 5 years specifically when these quarterbacks have been involved. But what was the stat that told the story here for you?
Look, the Bengals have scored 30-plus in 3 straight weeks and lost 2 of those games.
Look, I know it's probably annoying to hear this as Bengals fans, but this is a good football team, I think.
I think it's half a good football team.
it's a football team that's capable of winning every single week because of what their offense can do now that they have those wide receivers entrenched in the lineup.
If you have Joe Burrow, you have a chance.
Yeah. And it's what makes the Patriots loss at the beginning of the year so frustrating. And it's obviously what makes the Commanders loss as well, with Jaden Daniels having to go absolutely superhuman to beat you. Frustrating as well.
They are 1-4 and immensely close to being 5-0. Think about it. They fumbled on the 1-yard line against the Patriots. The Burrow fumble against the Chiefs, and then a PI. Jaden Daniels tore him up, but Washington couldn't get a stop in that game. They get one stop against Washington all day.
That's why it's very frustrating.
It's their defense. Even the first game against New England, they didn't give up a lot of points, but they got run all over in that game. And in this game, look, a 42.3 overall grade for their defense. That's the lowest since week 18 of 2021, and I'm pretty sure they were playing backups that week. I think I have to go another year back for something lower. And a 32 coverage grade in this game. The last one I could find that low for the Bengals is week 2 of 2019. Burrow wasn't even on the team yet. This defense, they had 1 sack. They had 2 forced incompletions and 47 coverage snaps, and they allowed 520 yards. And it's just, you can't give up 38, 41 points, even to the Panthers, who actually kind of had a shot to get back in that game, giving up 24 to Carolina. This is just, it's torpedoing their season. And I know their offense wasn't good in week 1, but their defense has made mistakes in 3 of these losses, big mistakes in 3 of these losses. And even, and I know we're going to get into the field goal argument and everything that happened in that sequence. The very next play, they gave up a 60-yard run to Derrick Henry. This is what we do when we take one punch in the stomach and we just quit on it. We give up a 60-yard run. This Bengals defense is the reason they're 1-4. And I know the Patriots game is rough. That was rough all the way around, but they're giving up points left and right, and they're making mistakes left and right. And there's really not a single player on their defense playing up to the standard they need to be playing at. To give up 41 points in this game. How much better can we get Joe Burrow to play? Through 5 touchdowns.
No, right. The bar's got to be high. But look, my stat that told the story is that this is just 2 of the best quarterbacks in the world going head-to-head. Like, that's the stat that told the story. It's one of the best games that we saw. The Lamar play down 10 with 5 minutes to go, where he stiff-arms Sam Hubbard twice, and he still finds Isaiah Likely in the end zone. That's nuts. That's MVP-level play, and obviously this is a multi-MVP player. But both of these guys, over 300 yards passing, both of them, 3 big-time throws and 1 turnover-worthy play, 9 passing touchdowns between the 2 of them, and both of them had a QBR above 119. It was just a special performance with both of these players. I think Lamar had the best play, but I think Burrow just, so many plays in this game where it was just picture-perfect passing. And like you said, they have, over the last 3 games, scored more than 30 points. As long as T. Higgins and Jamar Chase are in this lineup, this team can outscore anybody in the NFL. And again, I think that's what makes the 1-4 start so frustrating for this team, is because even if they were a little bit, right? Like, even if they were
if they were a little bit better on defense, just a little. If their defense was average right now, they'd be 5-0. They'd be the best team in the NFL.
Because just to be above 500 this year now, they have to go 8-4 the rest of the way. And that's hard, because going 8-4 is a pretty dang good record. And to say that only gets you 1 game above 500 and probably doesn't make the playoffs, you have to sort of get unrealistic now. Well, I don't want to say unrealistic, because anything can happen. We've seen great streaks happen in the league, but you got to start talking about, you got to go 10-2. You got to go 9-3 to make the playoffs. You're the Bengals, and that's incredibly frustrating. And again, it's why you cannot start slow out of the gate. And it's what makes the Zach Taylor era so frustrating, because they just do not start.
0-2 is a constant.
At least 0-1 is a constant, right? And so that's frustrating for this team. We'll get to Zach Taylor in a second. My most impressive, though, is Jamar Chase, what he was able to do. 91.5 receiving grade, 193 receiving yards, 96 of those yards coming after the catch, 5 explosive plays of 15 yards or more. He was back. 4.60 yards per route run. That is stupid numbers for Jamar Chase. So simply put, one of the best wide receivers that we have in the league, on fire with a great quarterback yesterday. You're most impressive and most disappointing, then we'll have the Zach Taylor conversation.
Let me get the number 1 receiver on the other side, Zay Flowers. Look, 111 yards on.
Would you say you're giving him his flowers?
I would. You know what? Now that you mention it, yes. Apparently, I wasn't going to do it without being aware of it, but yeah, we're going to do that. But anyway, 7 catches, 111 yards, actually a career high in a regular season game. 6 first downs, 4 missed tackles, and I think they need to get him working like towards the sticks and in the intermediate game, or let him use the full route tree, right? I think there's some games where the Ravens get caught up in like, okay, let's just throw him screens and let's make him do all the work. Mm-hmm. No, let's actually have him run the real route tree. And I think if we get more of this version of Zay Flowers that we've seen in the past in moments in single games, if we can use Zay Flowers like this every single week more down the field, this can be easily their number one receiver. It's the most talented receiver, easily. It's just he can do things after the catch from anywhere on the field. Let him use his speed. Let him use his route running down the field more often. Really like the game that Zay Flowers played. And honestly, the one thing, I go to most disappointing here, the one thing the Bengals weren't great with in this game, their offensive line was not great, and Burrow and Chase and Higgins were working through it. Offensive line, just a 54.1 overall grade. Mm-hmm. Ravens had almost a 63% pass rush win rate, and in the run game, less than a yard, averaging yards before contact.
Which goes into my most disappointing. It is the Zach Taylor end of game situation, because you get to overtime, which is what it is. Two great teams going up against each other. You're going to overtime. Even though the Bengals fans probably think they should have won in regulation, it's fine. You're going to overtime. Lamar gets the ball first. They're marching down the field. They fumble, right? Okay, Bengals get it back. Now they're in a situation where Pratt picks up the fumble. He's rumbling, stumbling a little bit. They basically get on the edge of field goal range with Evan McPherson, who's one of the best kickers in the NFL, right off of the bat. Your offensive line in this game was getting worked. You really didn't have much going on in the run game. They had a 48.1 run blocking grade as a group on the day. There was not a lot that was going on in the run game. You then chose to run the football 3 times just to settle for basically a 60-yard field goal. I get it. You should have faith in Evan McPherson. Gator grade. All right? He's a fantastic kicker. You didn't need to do that, especially with the day Joe Burrow was having. That's your best football player. Put the ball in his hands. Now, after the game, he got asked about it, and he's like, yeah, we had a pass play called the first play, and Joe checked out of it. Okay. Well, you gained no yards on that play. So it was 2nd and 10. So at that point, if you were running the football again, you are basically saying, I don't really care if we get this first down or not. Yeah. We're just kicking the field goal. Don't settle for a 60-yard field goal, and certainly don't settle putting the ball in somebody else's hand other than Joe Burrow. Now, I understand. Would you like to run the football there and at least get 8 or 9 yards to make this more manageable,
sure.
A 50-yard field goal? Of course you would.
You're also in overtime where the clock's not really a factor.
But no. Clock wasn't a factor. No, clock wasn't a factor at all. But you also have to have a finger on the pulse of your team and realize that you were not running the football well at all this game.
Yeah.
Chase Brown, his long of a rush was 16 yards in this game. If you take that 16 yards away, he has 30 yards on 11 carries. And that's the highest yards per carry average that would have been on the team. Zach Moss was 9 carries for 24 yards. You were not running the football all game. Throw the football. Joe Burrow's got 5 touchdowns. Joe's got 400 passing yards. I just thought it was. Now, obviously, the bad snap happened. And that was still within McPherson's range. So if that's not a bad snap, good chance he still wins that football game for you anyways. I just think you can, as a head coach, you've got to put your players in better circumstances than what Zach Taylor did.
It's certainly within his range. We've seen it before. I think it was, 53 or 54? 2 things. Yes, you mentioned it. Live and die with your best players. Your best players are Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins. Live and die with those guys. And if it's 3 incomplete passes, I don't think anybody says a word, honestly. I don't think they do. Does it always feel like, though, when teams have that miraculous earning of their way into a 55-yarder when they need it and there's 1 second on the clock, that kick always hits, and then when there's teams that passively do this and settle for 50-plus, they always miss it? Does it feel like that happens every time in these situations where it's like, oh, we're good, we have a 55-yarder, we'll be fine? Doesn't it feel like they always miss those?
It's got no pressure.
It's this passive mindset, and anything can go wrong. Okay, cool. Yeah, the bad snap. Yeah, these things can happen. If a bad snap happens on a 30-yarder, he might still just push it through. Don't settle. Don't live and die with your best players, and don't settle for it feels like it might be the football gods thing, but it feels like every time a team goes, yeah, we got a 55-yarder, easy money. No. I know kickers are more freakish than ever. I even see college kickers hitting more 60-yarders than I've ever seen before, but it doesn't mean it's easy.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean in a high-pressure environment with essentially your season on the line that it's easy either.
Chat's reminding me that it wasn't a bad snap; it was a bad hold. You were correct.
Yeah,
it was a bad hold. It was not a bad snap. But no, I agree with you, man. And it's sort of, again, I didn't want to. I said this early in the show. I didn't want to be a hypocrite about it because we went after Sean McDermott for passing the ball 3 times when he's putting the ball in Josh's hand, which that part of the argument I like.
Difference.
But there's different. It's different context.
The Bills
of what was going
ran
on.
the ball really well all day.
Certainly better.
They ran the ball twice as well as the Bengals did. The Bengals, even with all the points they put up, did not run the ball well at all.
Disappointing.
That's 2 different things. The Bills win by running the ball a pretty good amount. The Bengals don't. And in that spot, I don't. The first down play, fine. You can have the first. You mentioned it.
Right.
The next 2, it's 2nd and 10. Don't treat it like Don't treat it like Evan McPherson's 100%. And I know he's great. He's Gator great. You mentioned it, but like, don't just treat it like it's automatic. From 30 yards, okay, run the ball 3 times, or even kicking on first down. Honestly, whatever. But settling for 55 is rough.
Yeah. Okay. Next game. Let's go to Panthers and Bears. Bears win this one, 36-10. Not really competitive. Let's talk about the top 5 graded players for Chicago. Number 1 on the list, it's safety Kevin Byard. The veteran had a 91.7 overall grade with an interception in this one. Linebacker Tremaine Edmonds with an 85.4. Guard Tevin Jenkins with an 84.5, and then guard Bill Murray with a 83.9, then cornerback Jalen Johnson with an 83.7. Caleb Williams in this game, 72.0 overall grade. And if we flip sides to Carolina's side of things, defensive tackle Shai Tuttle had the best day with an 86.7. Wide receiver Jalen Coker, there you go, Rook, 83.3 overall grade in this one. Safety Xavier Woods with a 75.1. Linebacker Claude Charles with a 73.7, and then offensive tackle Ike Ekwonu at number 5 with a 70.0. Andy Dalton in this game, 51.1. We even saw a little bit of Bryce Young at the end. Stat told the story. What do we got here? 36-10, didn't feel super competitive. DJ Moore revenge game, whatever you want to call it. What was the stat that told us?
First of all, it's just fantastic that there was someone on the Chicago Bears named Bill Murray. That's so fitting there. That's just great. But I'm sure the Bill Murray loves that one. But look, this as it does often with the Panthers, and we've said this in prior weeks. That look, the reason sometimes that the bad teams stay bad for whether it be for a week or a season is they make mistakes. At one point, they were competitive in this game. It was 14-7 late in the second quarter, and you've got a sequence that went fumble, turnover on downs, missed 45-yard field goal, interception. That results in 16 points for the Bears. It's 30-7. The game is over. That's just, these are even with Andy Dalton in there, and there was some other things that broke down for the Panthers in this game. You go out there and you make consecutive mistakes like that against what is a good defense, especially in the secondary. This is one of the best secondaries in the NFL, and what they want to do, and they've done it every week, is force teams into mistakes, right? We saw it with Will Levis. That's how they beat the Titans. We saw it against the Colts. They didn't win that game, but Richardson had turnovers. Even a team like Houston, they held to 19 points. This Bears defense is really good, and if you're going to go and make mistakes against them and miss field goals and turn the ball over and all of that, they're going to beat you. Their offense isn't all the way there yet, but if you let their defense turn the ball over and create short fields, even the Rams. Look, the Rams lost that game to the Bears on turnovers. This is the Bears right now. They're going to create turnovers, and they're going to make Caleb Williams' life a little bit easier, and they're going to try to create short fields, and they're finding more. Shane Waldron's finding more balance in this offense. They're getting under center more. They're running the ball more. This is a Bears team, the last 2 weeks especially, playing way better complementary football and not just putting it on Caleb Williams' shoulders to win the game. And if you're a team like the Panthers or really anybody, if you go in here and you make mistakes against this Bears defense and allow them to play complementary football, they will win.
My side that told the story here, didn't think that this was going to be the case before I looked it up. Caleb Williams had a time to throw of 3.44 in this game. Normally, we talk about a lower time to throw being most impressive, right? Because you understand where the ball is going before pre-snap. The defense is doing exactly what you thought it was going to do post-snap, and you can deliver the football exactly where you thought that you were going to. That leads to an average time to throw somewhere around 2.5 seconds, 2.7 seconds, whatever, somewhere within that range. Williams had a 3.44 time to throw in this game. Didn't have a single game up to this point with a time to throw above 3. What was Caleb Williams' big criticism? What was the big criticism of him at USC? Held on to the ball way too long. Caleb held on to the ball. Now, I'm not saying that he did not have good quick throws in this game. He did. But the thing was, Caleb had a handful of plays in this game where he reverted back to USC Caleb Williams. Panthers didn't make him pay for it. He held on to the ball forever. You know why? Because the offensive lineman let him do it. And the offensive line in Chicago has caught a lot of fire this season just for the inconsistencies they had. Carolina's defensive line made them look like all-pro players. That's the stat that told the story. Caleb Williams was allowed to hold on to the ball because when he was holding on to the ball, it wasn't necessarily Superman stuff. There were a couple of plays where that was the case, but he was just standing back there, big chillin', 3 seconds, 4 seconds. He still got the ball in the middle of the pocket.
And he just looked more comfortable.
Nobody's even pushing him. Without Derek Brown, without Brian Burns, they have no threats on that defensive line. Nobody. Yep. Nobody who can consistently get after the quarterback in a way that genuinely disrupts the game. Shy Tuttle had a good game. Obviously, we gave him a good grade for it. But that was, to me, what told the story, is that even in the situations where when Caleb goes up and down, when he goes like full USC every now and then in the game, normally NFL teams can make a pay for it. The Carolina Panthers did not at all whatsoever. And I think that just kind of goes into my most disappointing as well, which is the Panthers' defense overall this year. I know that they don't have the star power. I understand that losing Derek Brown is hard. This is as bad as we thought that it could be going into the year. They are 32nd in pass rush win percentage against. They are 31st in total pressures, and they are 29th in sacks. They cannot get after anybody. And you're just not going to win many football games if that's the case. And the Bears showed you why. But, what's the most impressive for you?
I'll tell you what, Caleb Williams looked as comfortable as he's looked in his career, right?
You did?
I'll tell you, a guy who's been comfortable for a lot longer than Caleb Williams, that's safety Kevin Byard, the one veteran guy in a really good young secondary. He doesn't age. Look, 6 tackles, 1 for loss. Fantastic. What an interception that was that he had playing deep center field on that deep post route. 2 coverage stops, 91.7 overall grade. I actually remember, if you remember when we did our Bears preview, I had Kevin Byard as the defensive MVP of this team. And He might not have been the best player, but I just thought he was the right guy, especially in Matt Eberflus' defense, which is, with as much as they rotate safeties and do a lot of things, that's kind of the signature, is rotating and getting Kevin Byard and Jaquan Brisker going all over the place and never really being in the same spot 2 plays in a row, right? His football IQ, his ability to tackle, everything about Kevin Byard is what this Bears team needed when they needed one last piece in the secondary, right? Like when Eddie Jackson kept having his injury issues and they had to cut him, Kevin Byard was so perfect for this defense, and you're seeing it. It could be in the curl flat, it could be in a deep third, it could be anywhere, and he still makes plays, even with so many years and so many snaps under his belt in the league. I think he's really been the final piece to make this Bears secondary an elite secondary, and he was great in this game.
Kevin Byard, Itchy's football alumni, by the way.
Future Hall of Famer?
Ooh, I don't have the numbers in front of me to say, but he's been great. Even his Middle Tennessee, right? He went to Middle Tennessee, I believe. Correct.
Ooh, I'd have to look at that. That's
a hard one. Look it up while I'm
it.
talking. I think it was Middle Tennessee, and he was an interception monster. And then he started to have that same kind of success, taking the ball away at the NFL level.
Middle Tennessee is correct.
There you go. You guys doubted me.
It.
I can feel it. I can feel it in the chat. No, you guys were doubting me.
I usually get them. I usually get them.
No,
that was a harder one.
Yeah, at PFF all the time in the office, we just do the cliche where you just start naming a player. And
where'd he go?
That's where he went to college. We did that 5 times yesterday while watching the games. My most impressive in this game is Chuba Hubbard because he had 97 rushing yards in this one. 3 yards short of making it 3 straight 100-yard games. And in fact, the only player with more rushing yards over the last 3 weeks than Hubbard is the king himself. It's Derrick Henry. That's it. And then it's Chuba Hubbard. So on a team that trying to find bright spots, trying to find answers, Chuba Hubbard's one of them. He's been really great over the last couple of weeks. I already said my most disappointing, which was the Panthers defense overall. Who's your most disappointing?
Got to refine some answers for the Panthers in pass protection, though. This was the one game where their pass pro really let them down. A 45.7 pass pro grade, 17 pressures, 4 sacks on the day, and you come out with some questions, too, with both Austin Corbett and Taylor Moton both being hurt and coming out of this game. Panthers, obviously, there's a lot of things they won't survive without, but at least in the first 4 games, their pass protection had been really good. It wasn't. The Bears sent a lot of blitzes and stunts and different looks at them. You kind of saw a lot of mental mistakes up front for Carolina for the first time this year. So if they can get those things fixed, they stand a better chance of winning future games. But this was a rough little flashback to last year for the Panthers' offensive line.
When it comes to making the right hires, when you were hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role, right? Well, that's why you got to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. We do plenty of hiring here at PFF, and it's not just about linking the right resume with the job description, right? It's about finding the right people that are going to advance your brand and your company and your small business and gel the right way. LinkedIn is not just a job board. They help you hire professionals that you can't hire anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for jobs, but might be open to the perfect role. Sometimes those are the best employees that you'll hire. Any given month, 70% of LinkedIn users don't even visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you are just looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get qualified with great candidates within 24 hours. You can hire a professional like a professional on LinkedIn. Small businesses out there, they know that you wear a lot of hats, right? Sometimes you just don't have the time or the resources to make the hire that you want. That's why 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for their hirings. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/PFF. That is linkedin.com/PFF to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. Browns at the Commanders. Commanders win this game 34-13. Not great for the Browns, but great for the Commanders. Let's talk about the Commanders and the top 5 graded players here in this one. Linebacker Frankie Louvu, newcomer from this offseason, 80.6 at the top of the list. Offensive tackle Cornelius Lucas with an 80.3. Edge rusher Dorrance Armstrong with a 79.0. Defensive tackle Daron Payne with a 76.8. And then safety Quan Martin with a 75.6. Jaden Daniels in this one, 71.8. Over on Cleveland's side of things, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, he had one hell of a game, 90.9 overall grade. Linebacker Winston Reed right next to him, 89.7. Myles Garrett, 74.7. Devin Bush with a 71.1. I don't think it's, I don't know if it's great with 3 of your top 5 graded players are linebackers. I'm just going to say.
It's a good day for a linebacker.
I mean, it's a great day for the linebacker.
They're in there throwing confetti.
I don't know. I feel like that's too many tackles that you're making at that point in time.
The weirdest part of it is Washington won this game by 21, and it could have been a lot worse without Owusu-Koramoah, especially.
Well, for sure. There's no doubt. That's why he's at the top. And then edge rushers Darius Smith with a 70.7. Deshaun Watson in this game, a 40.0. Stat that told the story. Dalton, what do you got?
Real quick, I got one bit of trivia, and apologies if this has been announced on any other outlets, but it's something I got way too caught up in researching this morning.
All right.
Okay?
Yeah.
Washington won their second consecutive game by at least 21 points. When is the last time they did that?
2014.
Not even close. How about 1997?
Yeah, like I said,
the first time
since 97.
I think it was what did I see?
Points, a lot of points though.
Who? Wild guess. Who was the quarterback?
Oh, I don't know who it would have been in 97.
How about a 26-year-old Gus Frerotte? For
it
some reason
would not have taken me that long to get to Gus Frerotte.
It for some reason it was just something I was like, when's the last time they've won 2 games in a row by at least 21? I swear to you, now doing this, I got caught up in it for like 30 minutes. I was like, I have to find this because I just needed. I was like, it just feels like something they haven't done in a long time. I think it was November of 1997 was the last time they won 2 weeks in a row by at least 21 points.
Great poll.
Crazy. That's one of my stats that told the story in this game. Look, the spotlight's all on Jaden Daniels' arm and throwing the ball and the dual threat and everything he's doing, obviously, because he's the center of it. 215 rush yards for the Commanders in this one. I'm telling you right now, and I could start to see it last week, this run game is getting just as dangerous as the past game. 6.3 yards per carry in this game. Daniels had 11 for 82. Austin Eckler with a burst yesterday, coming back from a concussion, 6 carries for 67. Jeremy McNichols coming out of nowhere, Boise State legend, 7 carries for 44 yards and a touchdown. Brian Robinson, 2 touchdowns. They're second in the NFL behind the Ravens in rushing yards per game. And I'm telling you, it's the same principle as Lamar Jackson, where Jackson and the read option and all of that stuff, it holds up backside defenders, and they can play power football. They can play football in space. I think Washington forced 10 missed tackles in this game. You're watching this run game now, especially the last 2 weeks, and even they run more read options, as they should, than any team in football. When Jaden Daniels hits that mesh point, people freeze. The whole defense freezes. On the backside, they don't know what to do right now because if you take one false step, and we saw it multiple times yesterday, he's gone. It's a special level of speed that Daniels has on the ground, and the rest of these backs are playing really well. Again, Brian Robinson's been really good so far this year. Austin Eckler, I love that he even admitted in the offseason, he's like, I need to go somewhere I can have a part-time role. I can't do 350 touches anymore. I'm too old for that. He goes here, and this is the perfect spot for him. 6 carries, 67 yards, get some passing work too. This Washington run game is just as big a schematic problem as the passing game. And we've been talking about how they get down the sidelines and he's throwing more over the middle, and Cliff Kingsbury and the pass concepts and Terry McLaurin. But him as the centerpiece of the run game creates such a different numbers game as opposed to like last year, right? If it's Sam Howell or Brissett or a pocket quarterback, whoever they've had in the past 6 or 8 years,
right?
Even back in the days with Kirk Cousins, it's not a threat. With Daniels being such a home run threat on the ground, it's opening all of the space in opponents' front sevens for the backs to run, for him to run. If they crash, it's obviously the read option thing we've been watching for 15 years, but he's the master of it. I mean, it's what he does. He's done it his whole life now because this is just a part of modern football is the read option. It's crazy now. I'm telling you, sometimes you're seeing 2 and 3 guys on the backside. They have to freeze. You can't run blitz them because he's just going to take off right around it.
Right.
It's so difficult to defend them in both phases right now. So 215 rushing yards against what's supposed to be obviously Myles Garrett and a really good front seven. Just this Washington's on a burner right now in both phases.
Yeah, no, they absolutely are. And Daniels being willing to throw the ball when he gets out of the pocket is truly what's unlocking a superstar type of a player. I'm going to make the case for Jaden Daniels as the MVP of this league so far 5 weeks into the season, because when you just look at the last 3 weeks, now I understand the 5 weeks, you would want to include weeks 1 and 2 as well, but I'm saying moving forward, why this guy needs to be an MVP candidate. If he's not at the very top, then he needs to at least be in your top 3, because over the last 3 weeks, which are the 3 weeks that are most recent that we have to go off of moving forward. First in the NFL in overall grade as a quarterback, 92.1. First in the NFL in passing grade at 91.6. Fifth in the NFL for quarterback rushing grade at 74.7. And then EPA per play as a team. The Washington Commanders are number 1 in the NFL. And even if you want to go and include those first 2 weeks as well, they are still number 1 in the NFL. This kid's the reason why. And when you talk about MVPs, truly being the most valuable player, what Jaden Daniels is to this team, how well they are playing at an extremely high level, not just the opponents that they're going up against every week, but there you saw the statistics against the rest of the NFL. This dude's the MVP. So that is my most impressive in this game, how well he has been playing. What's your most impressive?
Okay, so as great as their offense has been, and we're always talking about it, if this Commanders pass rush is going to come on now, we've got a two-way story. Because my one question after they beat Cincinnati here on that Monday night high-scoring game, right? Daniels scored every drive, all that stuff, was, okay, can Dan Quinn fix this defense? Because they still look pretty bad that night. Well, they're fixing it the last 2 weeks. And in this game, they pressured Deshaun Watson on 18 of his 39 dropbacks. Very good number. Dorrance Armstrong with a monster game. 4 pressures, a sack, 32% pass rush win rate, 84.5 pass rush grade. And I'm going to tell you something. He's starting to figure out. I was watching this earlier this morning because I was up at 6 a.m. this morning watching this specific thing, of course. Is Frankie Louvu. Dan Quinn's starting to figure out how to use him. Because in Carolina, look, he's a converted edge guy, right? With the Jets, he was an edge player. Goes to Carolina, moves to linebacker. But Carolina still kind of uses him as this hybrid. He's a linebacker on early downs. He's an edge rusher on late downs because he's still a pretty darn good pass rusher. Dan Quinn now, he blitzed a lot the first week of the year against Tampa. Didn't work at all. He was blitzing like defensive backs like he would against like when he was with Dallas, right? Because they had so many safeties, those hybrid guys, right? Now, he got 2 weeks. He took 2 weeks off from blitzing, basically. It sounds funny. He took 2 weeks off from blitzing, okay? Now the last 2 weeks, he's starting to blitz again, but he's figuring out how to use Louvu and even Bobby Wagner. And the biggest schematic problem when you're playing Washington's front right now is you don't know, wherever they're at, you don't know if Louvu's coming, you don't know if Wagner's coming, you don't know if both of them are, or you don't know if neither of them are. These two, what he's doing with Frankie Louvu and Bobby Wagner, which is really the centerpiece of his defense, and it's great, again, Deron Payne with a good game, Dante Fowler with a good game. It's great that the front four is rushing the passer too. Dorrance Armstrong, again, really good. But he's creating a huge problem right now. He's basically taking any defensive back blitzes off the table. You guys need to cover. That's your job because we're awful in coverage. So we need as much coverage as possible. But what he's doing, in I don't want to say a similar manner to Brian Flores, but there's some similar looks where it's like you could get Wagner going and Luvu dropping, you could get it the other way. You could get Luvu off the edge in a 5-man front with Wagner as the only guy behind it because he can still handle it. He's Bobby friggin' Wagner, right? What they're doing right now in this front 6, front 7 is a lot of fun to watch because Dan Quinn's made the adjustments, and especially these 2 linebackers, and especially Frankie Luvu, as versatile as he is, he's starting to figure out the talent of these guys, and it's getting better up front. They still probably still need to cover a little bit better. It's a lot of young guys on the back end, but he's figuring out how to use this talent to bother the passer, and it's going to be fun in this next matchup. One quick question, too, on Dan Quinn. Right now, everybody would shoe in Kevin O'Connell as Coach of the Year, right? Probably.
Yes.
Is there not a legitimate chance it's actually Dan Quinn? Because that Minnesota,
no, it's still Kevin O'Connell.
Because I know it's Sam Darnold.
You saying his name, but it's still Kevin O'Connell.
This team gave up the most points in the NFL last year.
Look,
and they have a number 2 overall pick quarter. Is it not closer than we might think it is? I know O'Connell is like, okay, he's 5-0, and
I'm
Sam
glad
Darnold
that you
and all
brought his name up because he deserves to be talked about for the job that Washington's doing. And obviously the chat, I see the people in the chat, they're kind of freaking out. They're like, hey, it's 5 weeks into the season. Let's calm down with the MVP talk. Let's calm down with the Coach of the Year talk. But it's worth recognizing these guys because we are starting to build our list of people who are of this caliber, who are worthy of winning this award. And I think Dan Quinn's doing a phenomenal job. You know I love Dan Quinn, so I love the fact that you're even bringing him up. I think he's one of the best coaches in the league. I really do. It's gonna ebb and flow, of course. Like Daniel's gonna have down games as well. I think the Commanders overall, like the coverage to start the season was still not very good, but he is coaching very well with this unit. There's no doubt about it, especially with a lot of new guys in there. Most disappointing stat that told the story here for me, it's the Browns' offensive line is most disappointing for me just because, Wyatt Taylor's out with injury. Jack Conklin's still out with injury. Issa Posick missed a little bit of time because of injury. Jedrick Wills is not playing well. DeJuan Jones is not playing well. Even Joel Bitonio is struggling now because it's just backups and not a lot of familiarity that's going on in there. So the offensive line, which we've talked about Cleveland's offensive line being one of the best offensive lines in the NFL for probably the last 3 seasons, they're really, really struggling this year. And that goes into the Browns' passing game versus the Commanders, which is my stat that told the story here. Going into this season, the Commanders' defensive backs, 44.8 coverage grade weeks 1 through 4. They had a 70.6 coverage grade versus the Browns, so it was their best day as a unit. Deshaun Watson, 42.9 passing grade. I mean, he just continues to be not good, and there's just no way around it. So those are my most disappointing things. I see Deshaun Watson's your most disappointing as well. Anything to add other than the fact that it feels like it's just much of the same?
Just a quick thing. I mean, this is just where we are with the Browns. This is their team. They can't score. It's just where it's at. They can't score, and since they're incapable of scoring, they're wearing out their defense, being on the field too much. Watson, look, the moments where he's looked okay this year, it's because he's been okay under pressure. He's got 2 games this year with an 80 passing grade under pressure, but the other 3 games under 40, which is more indicative. That's why pressured passing grade and things of that nature are less stable than clean pocket grade. You look at him in a clean pocket this year, even when he has opportunities behind the shoddy offensive line, 72 clean passing grade and 5.4 yards per attempt. It's just not good. Even the 72 in a clean pocket's not good when most guys, you should be in the high 80s or 90s with that. That's about it. I don't really know where the hope is for this offense. I got nothing.
Sorry, Sav. Our producer doesn't want to hear that. He's a Browns fan. He just yelled at us from the other room. I could hear him. All right, we're going on to Raiders-Broncos as the next game here. Denver, Bo Nix, 3-0 in their last 3 games. People forget.
Solid job.
Not here on this show, but people forget. No. Just want to let you know.
It ain't just about those first 2 picks.
Oh, it's not?
I don't think so.
No, I'm a draft guy. Of course it's not. Denver wins this game 34-18. Let's look at the top 5 graded players for the Denver Broncos. Cornerback Patrick Surtain II, elevating himself to one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, which he's been doing for a while now. 92.0 grade in this one. 2 interceptions as well. Defensive tackle Malcolm Roach was next on the list with an 80.8. Cornerback Riley Moss. Not just about Patrick Surtain. We got Riley Moss as well, 80.1. Offensive tackle Garrett Bowles with a 79.5. And then running back Javonte Williams with a 78.6. Bo Nix in this one, 66.5 overall grade. Flipping to the other side of the Las Vegas Raiders. Tight end Brock Bowers, 82.7. Robert Spillane, their linebacker, an 81.5. Colton Miller, their offensive tackle, with an 80.8. Charles Snowden, edge rusher, he got a 72.2. And then Jacoby Myers with a 67.5. Gardner Minshew, although we could have thrown, I think Aiden O'Connell's grade was technically better, and they both had 23 dropbacks. But Gardner Minshew had a 50.3 overall grade, and I think Aiden O'Connell had a 63.5. But Yeah, what's the stat that told the story here?
A lot more handoffs from Minshew, so I went with the snap count. Anyway, so the Raiders in this game kind of had the opposite of the Jets' problem. Is the first quarter looked really nice. They were up 10-0. First quarter, here's the split for you on your stat. First quarter, 8.9 yards per play. Solid stuff.
Pretty good.
Solid stuff. Next 3 quarters, 3.7.
Not good.
Everything came apart for them when Minshew threw that pick six to Surtain. 100-yard pick six, had a guy in the flat rolling to his left, overshot him. Surtain caught it, housed it, everything at that. The Raiders were in control. They were 4 yards or whatever it was from 17-0 in this game being over in their favor. And he overthrew that ball and Surtain housed it, and that was just it. They shut down mentally. From there in, the Broncos believed, obviously, and they believed they were in the game at 10-7. They went from despair to hope in one play, and the Raiders, their next 7 offensive drives after that play, they had 22 yards total.
Jeez.
Yeah. They had one garbage time touchdown with O'Connell when the game was over, but that one play changed this entire game. They had 22 yards in the next 7 drives. They just shut down mentally after that. Even though they still had a lead after that happened. They had a lead, they had the ball, but it all just shut down. That one interception tanked this entire game. It's crazy. And again, they were 4 yards from being up 17-0. Everything shut down. Offense shut down. Broncos got roughly in the wheelhouse of what they want to do with their defense and controlling the ball. It just charged up Denver so much, and it deflated the Raiders so much that it just that's it. And Patrick Surtain, has he not been the best corner in football this year so far? I don't think there's anybody. I know Zion McCollum, I think, might still be the highest graded.
I don't know after this week because Surtain had an elite grade and McCollum's was okay. It wasn't terrible.
Just the eye test tells me, especially the way against other teams, that they've shadowed him on Garrett Wilson. They've shadowed him on Mike Evans. What they're asking Surtain to do is on that level, and he's doing it. And it's crazy. And then you make a game-changing play like this and have another interception later just for the stats, basically, because I think the game was over by that point. He's having a monster year. I'll tell you, I know we've talked about Fred Warner, maybe like Aiden Hutchinson on the Defensive Player of the Year list. I think Surtain's on that list. He's been that good.
Surtain has been incredible. My most impressive is Riley Moss, though, because we already thought that Surtain was good.
Pretty darn good duo they have.
Now it's like, all right, we can't throw to Patrick Surtain anymore. Let me throw to the other side. Oops. Too bad. 80.1 coverage grade, as we saw on the screen there. 6 targets, 3 receptions allowed, just 34 yards, and an interception in this one.
They make those DBs different in Iowa.
Did you see Patrick Surtain tweet a photoshopped picture of the White Men Can't Jump poster, but it's his face and Riley Moss's face?
That's spectacular. I didn't see that, but now I wish I had. That's awesome.
It's amazing. My stat that told the story, actually the Raiders' defense in this one. I thought this was going to be a much better defense going into the season. And when you look at overall season numbers here for the Raiders defense, 26.2 points per game allowed. That's 28th in the NFL. Just a 53.8 defensive grade in this game. Denver was 22nd in the NFL in points per game before this week. And they score 34. They hang 34 on them. I had way more faith in this Raiders defense going into this year. And they have been disappointing to me. So to me, the stat that told the story isn't the fact that the quarterback struggled, which they did. I mean, that was another most disappointing, was that the quarterbacks struggled to this point. But we already kind of figured that the Raiders were going to be shaky at quarterback. What I didn't think that they were going to be shaky or even bad at was on the defensive side of the football. And right now, they're just not a good football team on either side. And I know they just hired Antonio Pierce as their head coach, but man, with how things are unraveling, certainly with Davante Adams, how things don't look good at either of the quarterback spots, and his hands were kind of tied, I'm sure, in that situation because they didn't have the chance to draft one. But his side of the ball, that defensive side of the football, like that's your bread and butter, and they are not playing to the level that I feel like the Raiders could have played at or that we predicted they could have played at before the season. So I think that's pretty tough there. But you're most impressive and most disappointing. What do you got?
I'm going to stick with the Raiders real quick on the disappointing side because we actually have the same thing here, and it's the quarterbacks. And look, this is what I was worried about, and I compared this situation to Atlanta's last year with Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heineke, and you look at that preseason and you go, that's not it. And I know Gardner Minshew won him the Ravens game, pretty much just carrying him that day with Davante Adams. Brock Bowers right now is their best offensive player by far. It's not even close. You look at the grading.
Jacoby Myers is good.
He's good, yeah. But Brock Bowers.
Well, I mean Colton Miller. is probably their best.
Even then, his grades it's like a 71 right now. Brock Bowers is like by far their highest graded player too.
All right, I'm going to give Colton Miller his respect.
No,
I don't mean to take that
away
from Brock
and I love
Bowers,
Colton Miller. You know I love Colton Miller. Actually,
Right.
he was the guy I had at the MVP as his team. But either way, they're doing nothing right now. I mean, it reminds me of this. Here's the problem too. Think about last year's Falcons situation. And the Raiders aren't last in passing grade, but it wouldn't shock me if they get in that neighborhood by the end of the year. The Falcons were last in passing grade last year, but at least they had the run game, right? They could run the ball. They have Bijan. They have the O-line. This team is 30th in the NFL in rushing yards. They're 31st in rushing grade, and they're last in run blocking. So now there's nothing working on offense because they have, other than last week when they got it going a little bit against Cleveland, they haven't run the ball at all either. So you have a team that can't throw the ball. You have a team that can't run the ball. And you just mentioned a team, especially, I told you, the Malcolm Kuntz injury, that season-ending injury, that's awful.
Hurts.
Because his emergence last year was so big for them. They're 2-3, and it does not even feel like they're 2-3. I mean, because of the Ravens win and the goodwill you got from that, there's not a whole lot going right now. And look, their next starting quarterback is currently playing college football. I don't know which one it is, if it's Shedeur Sanders or Carson Beck or Jalen Milroe, whoever it is. I know that there was the video of Shedeur talking to Mark Davis was it at a WNBA game the other day? Where
something,
was it?
yeah.
I think maybe at the Aces game, something like that. There was a video of him already talking to Mark Davis. They need a franchise guy.
Yep.
And I know we've said that not for a long time. They had Derek Carr for a long time, but they need a franchise guy.
Yep.
It's just that's what's missing. Most impressive. Let me go to the other side. I know I gushed about Surtain earlier, and I almost picked him for this, but I had him last week too, so it's kind of a little unfair. Just give me Sean Payton. Look, there's a lot of teams right now. I think like Dallas. I think like even a Buffalo. There's the 49ers. There's a lot of teams looking for their identity. Denver has their identity. They're going to play great defense. They're going to grind it out on offense, and he's going to tell Bo Nix not to screw it up. Okay, and I'll start with Nix. 3 turnover-worthy plays in week 1. First time since he was at Auburn that he did that. Last 4 games, he's only got 2. Only 2 turnover-worthy plays in the last 4 games. It's not. I'm telling you, it's not flashy.
People go after Nix, I think, just for the memes.
Probably.
That's like Nix. I think it's just the easy thing to do is make jokes about Bo Nix. But there were even, I feel like people, over the last couple of weeks who I was seeing on the timeline, like try to dunk on Bo Nix, and it's like, is he perfect? No, but he's doing good things.
If you wanted a guy. What was talked about the entire pre-draft process? Oh, Bo Nix and Sean Payton, that's what you want. Those 2 guys together, right? Well, here's why. And they may have been yelling at each other on the sideline. I really don't care because that's how
I don't either.
Because that's how Sean Payton coaches.
Yeah,
and that means he, even making $20 million a year, he still wants to win. Okay? And he believes this team, he can take this team to the playoffs. Bo Nix is not screwing it up. Complimentary football, right? This defense, they're number 5 in defensive grade. They're number 5 in takeaways. They're number 2 in scoring defense. They're number 3 in total defense. This defense is real. We've seen it for 5 weeks now. This is a really good defense with a really good secondary. And the pass rush, even young guys like Jonah Ellis up front, really good in the pass rush. This team is playing the exact way they want to. He knows they have a good defense. They try to run the ball enough with guys like Javonte Williams and McLaughlin and that. And he tells Bo Nix, don't screw it up. Even when he's yelling at him. That's probably always saying, hey, man, don't screw it up. Because our defense can win us ball games, and we just need to score enough points on offense. And I think Nix, as conservative as he is as a passer, it helps him in this scenario because he can just go out there and not feel like he has to force it and carry a team and do all that. I think Sean Payton's always emphasized, even when he had Drew Brees, I can't have my quarterback trying to carry us every single week. Because the teams that were like that with the Saints in like the early teens, when they were going 7, they were leading the league in total offense and they were going 7-9. Sean Payton knows that's not the way to win. So I think I'm wicked impressed with Sean Payton just knowing what he wants in this football team, and they're winning because they're playing to their identity that he's built already.
All right, let's talk about the Cardinals 49ers. Had to make sure which game was next here.
Absolutely.
Cardinals win a thriller, 24-23 on the road in San Francisco. This game had a lot of elements to it, but because the Cardinals won, let's give them their flowers and let's talk about the top 5 graded players on the team. Dadrian Taylor-Demerson, their rookie safety, didn't quite play 25 snaps. He played 21, but I put him on the list anyways, damn it, because he got a 91.8 overall grade this past week. Wide receiver Michael Wilson with a 79.6. Running back James Conner with a 76.8. Edge rusher Zaven Collins with a 74.5. Tight end Trey McBride with a 71.7. And then quarterback Kyler Murray with a 73.5. On the other side of things, Brandon Ayuk had himself a day. Got a 90.0 overall grade. Edge rusher Nick Bosa with an 87.9. Offensive tackle Trent Williams with an 83.8. What else is new? Good grade for him. Offensive guard Aaron Banks, which I'm sure a lot of people love to see, 81.5. And then Leonard Floyd with a 79.1. Quarterback Brock Purdy with a 73.7. Which stat that told the story here? What do you got?
I'll go with the Cardinals offense, and it seems pretty simple all of a sudden through 5 games. They had a 70.9 team pass pro grade in this game, and they only gave up 1 sack. And Kyler Murray was pressured on 9 of his 32 dropbacks. Not a bad number. A little over 25%, right? 27, 28, somewhere in there. 3 games where the Cardinals have had a 70 pass pro grade, 31 points a game. 2 games with less than that, 13.5 points a game. They protect Kyler Murray, and they allow him to do things both in structure and out of structure. Their offense is really, really good. The run game is really good. Marvin Harrison, we know what he can do. Michael Wilson, Greg Dortch, Trey McBride, Elijah Higgins scored a touchdown in this game. They got a boatload of weapons. They got a quarterback who's 5'8" or whatever he is. When they protect him, they're a really, really good offense, like a top 10 offense. And especially in the second half of this game, it showed. And it's a two-dimensional offense as well. But to me, it's getting to be pretty clear. This offensive line, it's not the best offensive line in the league. It's not a bad one either. It's kind of, especially with Paris Johnson at left tackle, it's a young offensive line that's putting the pieces together. They're getting better as a unit. They started that the second half of last year. The days when they're on, this is a dangerous offense that can beat anybody. They just have to be on up front in both the run and pass games so they can execute.
Sometimes the game is very simple.
Yep.
Win in the trenches, right? I think that's kind of what a takeaway could be for this game, especially for the Cardinals and how well they were able to play, especially down the stretch. My stat that told the story, I'm going to rope it into my most impressive because they kind of play off of each other. Niners run defense is the stat that told the story to me. This season, the 49ers have a 58.3 run defense grade as a team that's just 23rd in the NFL. Against the Cardinals, they had a 52.2, so even worse than their average grade so far this season, and specifically in the second half, a 51.9 run defense grade in the second half. We go to James Conner, who is my most impressive. 86 total yards for James Conner on 19 carries. 75 of those yards came after contact, which you love to see, but 52 of those yards and 43 after contact came in the fourth quarter. We were watching that game together, and I'm freaking out watching the game because, on 1st and 10 or like a 2nd and long or whatever, they're still handing the ball off to James Conner. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, you got to come back on the scoreboard. At that point, they needed to score points to get ahead in the football game. And I'm like, you are way too conservative right now. But James Conner, certainly the yards after contact helped. I mean, he is a beast. But the 49ers could not defend the run in the fourth quarter. And it's going to be an Achilles heel of this team for where they want to go. This is a team that has Super Bowl aspirations. They're still one of the most talented teams in the NFL, and it's just too easy for teams to run the ball against them right now, and it's becoming a consistent problem. So that is, to me, a stat that told the story, because if the 49ers are better on run defense, even with what happened to Jake Moody, even with them not being able to go for a field goal, and that ended up being the reason why you lose by 1 point, whatever. If they can defend the run better, this doesn't happen. They don't lose the game. That's it. They just have to defend the run better, and they have not at this point in this season. So I wanted to shout out James Conner at the same time, but that was my stat that told the story and my most impressive. Who do you have as your most impressive?
I'll say this. One other thing with the Niners there, too. 2 things that concern me. One, I believe now they've lost, 7 of their last 9 one-score games?
Wow, I didn't know that.
And the 2 wins were in the playoffs. Yeah, I think they've lost 7 straight regular season one-score games. And that run defense,
Kyle Shanahan will never escape the allegations.
That run defense was a problem for some reason. Well, because he's really good. When Talanoa Hufanga got hurt last year, ever since then.
Oh, yes.
Ever since then, their run defense has been a major issue. It's a major.
And he started this game and went out.
Yeah. Ever since that injury happened, I think it was week 9 or 10. I think week 10
and they drafted Malik Mustafa and Jair Brown to be that was.
So young guys, though.
And they are, obviously, that and Hufanga has played
this is
really
a problem.
well.
And you don't have Javon Hargrave now.
Yes,
not that he was a great run defender, but it's still a presence,
yeah,
right? It's a problem. Look, most impressive. Cardinals won this game. Best player on the field was Brandon Ayuk.
Played very
without
well.
question. 8 catches, 147 yards, 4 missed tackles.
He was tearing them up.
88.2 receiving grade. He was tearing them up. Now, it took him a couple weeks, I think, to get in a rhythm here. He's one of the best receivers in football. He played like it. Yeah, he was the best player on the field no matter which way you slice this game. It just a monster. That's a number one receiver. He deserves every dollar he got with that contract.
All right, so we got 2 more games. We're going to talk about the Giants and Seahawks, Packers and Rams, and then we're going to briefly touch on Thursday Night Football as well.
Briefly, just for a minute.
I got takes. Obviously, you hear us talk about the NFL plenty here on this show. They say that the NFL is the best reality TV show that there is. And this season, to keep up with all that, we're going to be listening to a new podcast called The Offensive Line with Annie Agar. Annie is an NFL insider, and you probably know her from her Uncomfortable Team Meetings on Social series that you guys have probably seen on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, all that good stuff. She's pumping out great content there. Annie's an NFL insider, so you probably know all that good stuff there that you've already seen. The Offensive Line, it kicks back with NFL superstars, celeb fans, all that good stuff throughout the NFL season to unpack the weekly lines, odds, spreads with the usual brand of sharp wit and banter that you're used to from her contact. The pod's packed with all sorts of humor. It's a must listen to keep up with the latest NFL news and culture all season long. You can follow the Offensive Line on the Wondery app or wherever you guys get your podcasts. You get access bonus episodes as well and listen ad-free right now by joining the Wondery Plus podcast. Let's talk about that Giants-Seahawks game. Giants, huge dub.
Big win.
No way around it.
They're very close to having 3 in a row. If they were a little bit better against Dallas, they would have 3 in a row.
Needed it, I think. Brian Daboll era. I like Brian Daboll a lot, but it feels like we're on life support at this point. So this was a huge step in his direction to defending, obviously keeping his job and getting New York going in the right direction, because I do still think he's a good coach. It's just been a bad situation over the last couple of years. 29-20 is the final score in this one. So let's talk about the Giants' top 5 graded players first. Quarterback Deonte Banks at the top of this list with an 84.6. Offensive guard Greg Van Roten with a 82.2. Wide receiver Terry Slayton picking up the slack with no Malik Neighbors in this game, 76.9. Offensive tackle Jermaine Illuminor with a 76.7. Cornerback Cordell Flott with a 74.2. And then Daniel Jones with a 70.4. On Seattle's side of things, linebacker Terrell Dodson with an 83.0. Linebacker Jerome Baker next with a 72.3. Tyler Lockett, their wide receiver, with a 70.5. Jerron Reed with a 70.1. And then edge rusher Derek Hall with a 69.2. Geno Smith in this one, a 70.0. Stat that told the story here for the Giants' big win.
All right, this is getting wrapped in with my most disappointing.
Go ahead.
All right, let me set the stage. The Seattle Seahawks lead the NFL in rushing grade. Okay. The Seattle Seahawks are 28th in the NFL in pass protection grade. Okay. Geno Smith over the last 2 years was the NFL's highest graded deep passer. All right?
Okay.
Now I'm going to give you a second set of things. Okay. And context, we're playing the Giants, who admittedly have a really good defensive line, right? Lawrence,
in theory,
Burns, Thibodeau, they're top 8 or 10 in pass rush grade, that whole bit.
In theory.
Okay.
Because at the beginning of the year, they were not.
They're getting there.
They're better.
They're running hot now. Dexter Lawrence is a monster.
I'll get to that in a second.
And Seattle's pass pro is a problem.
Yeah, I'll get to that later as well.
The Seahawks called 7 run plays this entire game.
Wow. Wouldn't have thought that.
They called 7 running plays the entire game.
Would not have thought that.
And they called only 3 play-action passes the entire game.
Why?
And, okay, they called 5 screens in this game. 2 of them worked.
Okay.
And, okay, so maybe you're dropping back and chucking the ball with Geno Smith, right? Geno Smith's average depth of target was 5.3 yards. His lowest...
so this is just an against the script game for them.
Against it. They burned it.
Well, yeah.
I don't know what the script was. This was improv. This was Whose Line Is It Anyway? I don't know what this was.
Great show.
Ooh, great, legendary show. That's Geno's lowest average depth of target since week 9 of 2022.
I'd believe it.
So
I would believe it.
We don't feel like running the ball, and we don't feel like chucking it deep, because even though we have Geno and Metcalf and all these guys, and we don't feel like calling play action to at least make him think we're running the ball. I really like Ryan Grubb as an offensive coordinator. I think he's done a great job, at least through the first 4 weeks, and he was awesome at Washington. I don't know what was going on in this game, because I'm watching this and I'm like, what? Why are we not running? Then I get the Giants' D-line is good, but I don't know what the plan was here. They called 7 run plays the entire game. In a game, they were not down 3 scores in this game. They were within 7 points this entire game. And they called 7 run plays the whole game and 3 play-action passes. And it wasn't one of those things where it's like, oh, let's throw early and set up the run and unload the box and, run into a light box and set it up. No, there was just like, nah, Kenneth Walker, take the day off. He had 5 carries. Like, I don't get it.
Yeah,
and
I don't
it
either.
felt like earlier in the year, didn't we get like one really good day from Zach Charbonnet too?
Charbonnet's played well.
Right.
Yeah.
He's played. They lead the league. Even with the 3 of them, Geno and Walker and Charbonnet, they lead the league in rushing grade. And I know the O-line's not great, especially in the interior, and even with a backup right tackle. I get it. You can't just not do it. If you're choosing to be one-dimensional in what was a close game, that they walked into this game with zero faith they could block the Giants. Didn't even give themselves a puncher.
Well, they didn't.
Well, they didn't, but I go, if you're one-dimensional and they're going to tee off on you because they know you're trying to play 7-on-7, well, they're going to tee off on you.
I'm surprised they wouldn't run the ball more, because that's my stat that told the story is the Giants' defensive line.
At least chuck it deep to set it up. Geno's got a 5-yard average depth of target.
Right.
I don't know what
low.
I don't know what this plan was.
Lawrence, Burns, and Thibodeau all had passers win percentages above 10 in this game. They had 7 sacks as a team.
Well, they
so
knew
obviously
what was coming.
Every player on the offensive line for the Seahawks allowed a pressure in this game. 4 of the 7 sacks were credited against the offensive line specifically. I didn't realize this. You mentioned it, and I'm just kind of like piggybacking off it. 33.8 pressure percentage this season is 4th highest in the NFL. Did not realize the Seahawks offensive line was that bad at pass protection.
Was that bad last year? Oh, yeah. And now they're trying to fix it with guys like Lake and Tomlinson, and now you're getting
Tomlinson actually had the 2nd highest grade.
Not right.
Of any of them.
That's a problem.
Well, which is fine.
Abraham Lucas is hurt. I understand.
Yeah.
I understand the quick passing thing. But if you're playing 2 things to beat a great D-line like that, play with tempo, run the football. Mm-hmm. Choosing not to run the football, you make those guys' lives real easy. Dexter Lawrence doesn't have to worry about an A-gap or nothing like that. He don't got to worry about nothing. I'm just, okay, I guess we'll pin our ears back for 60 minutes. I don't understand. Now I get why the Seahawks didn't score but 13 points on offense, because I don't know what the plan was. And it's nothing. This didn't look like anything like this in the first 4 weeks. I don't know what they were. It's like they came into this game so scared of this Giants D-line that they just said, like, no, we're just going to not even bother with it. I have no idea what the plan was.
I'm going to shout out Tyrone Tracy as my most impressive, though, because that was my stat that told the story and most disappointing. But Tyrone Tracy definitely gave the Giants something to look forward to throughout the rest of the season on the ground. Devin Singletary gets hurt in this game, so Tracy comes in. 18 carries, 129 rushing yards, and a 76.1 rushing grade. That alone could be great, right? Those stats alone could be enough to say, like, hey, a most impressive in this game. This stat impressed me even more about Tyrone Tracy. 4 explosive plays of 10 yards or more when it came to rushes on the ground. 3 of them came on 1st and 10. 1st and 10. You're starting to drive. You're starting to set it down. You're handing the ball off. This guy's getting you a 1st down immediately after that and more. And then the other one, the 4th explosive run, came on a 3rd and 2. Oh, okay, 3rd down. We're barely picking up the 1st down. Just kidding. Now I'm getting more than 10 on you. Tracy gives them the ability to be dynamic. And it's why I said at the beginning of the year, Tyrone Tracy will eventually be the starting running back of this team in his rookie season, because he gives you juice that Singletary doesn't. Is he going to screw up more than Singletary in the little things? Yes, because he's a rookie and Singletary's a vet playing with a coach that he knows. But this is evidence that this guy allows you to be dynamic. And especially on a day where you did not have Malik Neighbors, they needed this. And Tyrone Tracy was able to show you exactly what he's going to be able to do at the NFL level. So I thought the timing of those 4 explosive plays, 3 of them coming on 1st and 10, very impactful. Very impactful, especially when it comes to leading long drives and everything like that. So he was the most impressive for me. Who was the most impressive for you?
Another young guy for him. I'll go with a second-year guy. The top of that top 5, we had Deonte Banks at corner. This is a guy I've watched a lot of tape on last year and this year, and this was his best game yet. 5 targets, 2 catches, 17 yards allowed, 3 forced incompletions, 90.3 coverage grade. And the one thing I was frustrated with last year when he would have some rough games is they way too often ask him to do too much. Press man against the other team's best receiver, like the Darrelle Revis assignment. And I'm like, why are we doing this? Like, this is a lot of pressure on such a young kid who needs some work. Like, he could be a really good football player. I do think he's a really good football player. They asked him to do so much. And there was samples of it last year where when they had him in zone coverage, it's pretty darn good. Okay? This year, same thing. There are times I noticed, the best example, the CeeDee Lamb touchdown last week. Who was one-on-one press man against CeeDee Lamb? Deontay Banks. And this was a theme last year, I'm telling you. When they don't ask him to do that sort of thing, okay, they're not a man coverage team. I thought that's why they hired Shane Bowen and got rid of Wink Martindale, is because, okay, we're going to play more zone coverage. We're going to use our eyes and our instincts more, right? This year, Deontay Banks in man coverage, 32.3 coverage grade. In zone coverage, 78.2. They just need to work to the strengths of their team, and this guy's going to be really darn good. He's a good football player. The more that they lean into zone coverage, they're not a man coverage team. And they lost Xavier McKinney, the center fielder, who we're going to get into in about 2.5 minutes here. This is what they need. This is the blueprint. All three of those forced incompletions, zone coverage. Deontay Banks can be really good. Use him right.
I love the Deontay Banks shout-out, because I think he's a really talented football player. I already talked about how Seahawks offensive line was my most disappointing. Do you have a most disappointing that you didn't mention?
It's just Ryan Grubb and that whole whatever was going on offense. Fair. That entire picture.
We got one last Sunday game. It's the Packers versus the Rams. Packers win this game 24-19. Green Bay's 5 highest graded players in this game. TJ Slayton, their defensive tackle, with an 89.3. Safety Xavier McKinney, unbelievable. 5 straight games with an interception is stupid. 88.3 grade in this game. Their rookie, Edgerrin Cooper, the linebacker, 85.5. Kingsley Enagbare with 84.4. And then safety Evan Williams with an 81.9. Quarterback Jordan Love at 51.5 in this game. On the other side of things, for the Los Angeles Rams, defensive tackle Kobe Turner with a 90.1. Offensive tackle Alaric Jackson with an 83.1. Rookie edge rusher Jared Verse with a 76.7. Defensive tackle Bobby Brown with a 75.7. Wide receiver Jordan Whittington with a 75.2. And then quarterback Matthew Stafford with a 54.4. I'll start with things because it's something that I've been sort of wanting to talk about here on the show for the last couple of weeks, because I feel like I had a hunch and now we've got enough evidence and data to be able to actually talk about this. The Rams in the first half. You talk about the Jets struggle in the first half. We talk about the Steelers struggle in the first half. Rams are the sneaky team that are also very bad in the first half. They were also averaging 6.4 points in the first half per game before this week. That was third lowest in the NFL. They had a negative 0.169 EPA per play in the first quarter this year. That is 25th in the NFL. And their 0.019 EPA per play in the second half is 6th. So it's the same thing as the Jets. It's the exact same script that you set up with the Jets. The first quarter, cheeks. It's bad. They cannot figure it out. They cannot get out of the gate and start hot. The second half, they're almost a top 5 offense in the NFL. So I love the Matt Stafford and Sean McVay connection to where, like, if you give them 3 quarters to figure it out, they're going to put the foot down. They're going to be on your ass in the fourth quarter. They're going to make sure this is a football game now at the fourth quarter. You got to figure it out at the beginning. You're wasting a quarter of play. You're wasting a half a play. So, to me, the stat that told the story is this is a 5-point loss here for the Los Angeles Rams that I feel like this could have been an easy, I don't want to say easy win. This was a plausible win for them if they get out of the gate faster. 0 points in the first quarter. Again, this game, they had 13 in the second quarter. So, okay, you make up for it a little bit, but got to start quicker for the Rams. Even through all the circumstances and the injuries they have and the unfamiliarity, I get it. You clearly are getting things down when you get to the third and fourth quarter. You got to be able to start out faster than the Rams started out. What about you?
I think the Rams' problem is pretty simple. They just can't pass protect. It's the injuries up front have just killed this team. And when you have an older quarterback who doesn't move like he used to in Matthew Stafford, look, he was pressured on a third of his dropbacks, which is actually less than I thought it would be. 43.8 passing grade under pressure, though. He doesn't throw under pressure like he used to because he doesn't move like he used to. Packers had a 60% pass rush win rate in this game. The Rams a 38.2 pass pro grade. Got young kids playing on the inside who really shouldn't be playing because of some injuries. Rob Havenstein struggled at right tackle in this game. The Packers defensive line went crazy. And the Rams, just for the context of it, okay, New England, and as much as we've talked about their offensive line, they're 31st in pass pro grade, okay? The Rams are 10 points below that. That's the Rams. It's unsustainable levels of pass protection if you're trying to win a football game. It's by far the worst in the league right now. I know the injuries, but this looks so much like 2 years ago when they only won 5 games because they couldn't block anybody. They need to get these guys healthy on the inside, especially, or they're just a mess. If you can't pass protect, especially at the level that they're not pass protecting, it ain't happening.
I'm giving a shout out to Jordan Whittington, the Rams rookie wide receiver, for his performance in this day. Caught a team-leading 7 of 10 targets for 89 receiving yards and a 73.5 receiving grade. He has the 6th highest receiving grade of all rookie wide receivers. So I love Jordan Whittington, man. I loved him early on in his time at Texas.
Just gritty.
Dude, and he just went through so many unfortunate injuries. And he just was not able to have the college career that the recruiting tab and his high school tab said that he could have. And I'm just really happy for him. Really happy that he ended up in a good spot in LA where they're utilizing him in a lot of different ways. And he's gritty. He'll go up, he'll make the tough contested catches for you. He used to be a burner, but after a lot of injuries to the lower body, he's not as fast anymore. He's still fast. He's a good athlete, but he's not as fast as he probably could have developed into being. And so he's developed into, all right, I'm going to go up and get the football. I'm going to be a contested catch type of a dude from the slot. So I love to see it. Big shout out to Jordan Whittington, making it through a really tough injury-riddled college career to get to the NFL and have this kind of production is very impressive to me. So most impressive for me is Jordan Whittington. What about you?
Xavier McKinney. Has to be. Look, this
Fair. One of us had to do it.
I said it a lot over the offseason. This was my favorite offseason signing by any team. It was such a perfect fit. Jeff Hafley's defense, that whole bit. 2 targets, no catches, another interception, 5th game in a row with an interception, forced incompletion. He should have had another interception and dropped it. That's why he plays defense. But 81.5 coverage grade. Right now, he's the best safety in football. I don't even hesitate at that one. There's no ball hawk.
I mean, he's playing well.
Even a solid day in run defense too. He had a fumble recovery. This is everything the Packers hoped for when they signed him. There wasn't to me in the offseason a better offseason signing, and so far there has not been than Xavier McKinney. He is the anchor of their defense. I really think right this minute he's the best safety in football.
Who's your most disappointing?
It's actually the quarterback, Jordan Love.
Best Will Levis impression?
Yes. And
back of the end zone?
Nice as it is for him to hold the fort down for Levis while Tennessee's on a bye week. But I'm actually, the last 2 weeks, what we've seen from Jordan Love, it looks a little bit like some old habits are creeping in. I don't love what I'm seeing, ironically. Footwork all over the place, leading to shoddy accuracy. Mm-hmm. Certain times where that deep ball that Jaden Reed caught in this game yesterday, that ball should have been picked off.
No, it should have been picked off, and it was instead just an insane play. But that should have been picked off.
Like, you're seeing back foot throws, off-platform. Like, we love the off-platform throws from Jordan Love when they're done right. Mm-hmm. Right now, look,
everybody does.
He's got to get in a rhythm, right? Got hurt, out 2 games, now getting back in 2 games. We've got Romeo Doubs controversy. We've got Dontavion Wicks struggling. We've got Christian Watson hurt because he's always hurt. We're figuring out who's the tight end in the run game. And this offense with Love in there the last 2 weeks it actually looks less creative than it did with Malik Willison, but Love's missing throws. He's missing throws. There's some bad habits kicking in with his accuracy and his decision-making that look a little bit more like the first half of last year. I think he can snap out of it because obviously he's still really good. He knows what he's doing. He's another year in the system. But I'm not particularly a fan of what we're seeing in these 2 games. He looks healthy to me. I think he's moving fine. But it looks like the first half of last year right now. And those are the habits you really don't want because that's when he puts the ball in danger.
My most disappointing is Dontavion Wicks, and you mentioned Wicks has had all the opportunity in the world to really step up and be the wide receiver 2 on this team behind Jaden Reed, and with Christian Watson being beat up, and obviously, like you said, all the stuff that's happening with Romeo Doubs, this is an opportunity. He played in 25 receiving snaps in this game, second only to Reed. Reed's the only one who played more, and he played 27, so he only played 2 more. Wicks, another 2 drops on the year, 52.9 receiving grade. He caught 2 of his 7 targets. He has been disappointing this entire season. His stats don't look terrible because they're sheer volume, but catchable passes caught, he's way lower than he should be. The drops are an issue, and he just doesn't have the chemistry to connect with Love. Catching 2 of 7 targets, it's got to be way more reliable than that. So this is somebody who I had a lot of high hopes on coming into the season, but he is unfortunately showing that those deep ball passes that we saw from last year, those were like hey, this is how you use him in the offense, not a hint of what's to come, of what could be more. It feels like he might just be that one-dimensional deep threat for them, and they're trying to make him more, and he's just not really rewarding him for that time that they're giving him on the field. Last game that we're talking about, let's turn back the clock. Let's very quickly talk about Thursday Night Football because you've already seen a lot of analysis and everything. We've digested that game. And the Bucs blew it at the end, so I don't want to talk about it a lot. The Falcons win this game 36-30 here in this game. We'll talk about the Falcons' top 5 graded players. Wide receiver Drake London's at the top of the list at an 84.4. Offensive guard Chris Lidstrom with an 80.8. Safety Jesse Bates with a 72.2. David Onyemata with a 70.3. And then cornerback A.J. Terrell with a 66.8. Kirk Cousins would have been at the very top of that list with an 85.3. On the other side of things, Mike Evans was the top graded Tampa Bay Buccaneer at an 83.4. Edge rusher Yaya Diaby with a 78.2. Running back Rashad White with a 75.9. Offensive tackle Justin School with a 73.6. Cornerback is Ian McCollum with a 73.4. And then Baker Mayfield would have also been at the very top of this list with a 90.7. Overall grade in this one. Falcons win it. What was the story here?
You want to go first? We pretty much have the same thing. If you want to go, if you want to get it off,
if
you want to get it off your chest.
Yeah, I mean the Bucs were terrible in coverage in this game, and it's becoming alarming because they were also terrible in coverage against the Denver Broncos, and they shouldn't have been that bad in it. I understand that they don't have Antoine Winfield Jr., but just I get some stats to just talk about how bad the Bucs were in coverage. Obviously, you have the Kirk Cousins numbers; he passed for over 500 yards, so. Just raw common stats. When a guy passed for over 500 yards, guess what? You didn't have a great day in coverage. But some more stats on top of that. Out of the 58 attempts that Kirk Cousins had in this game, 37 were open targets. 37. That's nuts. They gave up 14 plays of 15 yards or more in this game. I mean, the fact that they were in it at the end, and honestly, the fact that they should have won this game, Tampa, is just a testament to how well Baker Mayfield played and how well Liam Cohen is cooking as the offensive coordinator. Because Todd Bowles did not hold up his side of the defense. It was a terrible day for Bucs coverage, and those are more statistics. That, of course, told the whole story because if you let a guy pass for more than 500 yards on you, yeah, guess what? You're probably going to lose.
Yeah, no, for sure, and it's the same thing. It just has to be, right? In a 54.6 team coverage grade, their lowest since week 11 of last year, which I think was against San Francisco, which makes a lot of sense. It was a rough one. I mean, I'll stick with that, and I'll go specifically to most disappointing real quick. The linebackers, look, Servassier Dennis was out for this game, and there's a dynamic with the Bucs where KJ Britt comes out on third down, and Servassier Dennis comes in, former safety, converted to linebacker, a little more athletic in coverage, and we know Levante David's usually great, but look, these two Levante David and KJ Britt with Dennis out had to play all the coverage snaps. David a 48.5 coverage grade, Britt a 46.5, combined to allow 12 catches for 135 yards and 3 missed tackles for David. We know Levante David, future Hall of Famer, should be that whole thing. And I really like KJ Britt as a player, but 2-down linebacker there. And without Dennis and both of those guys in coverage, it was rough. Yeah, Kirk Cousins had anything over the middle that he wanted.
Yeah, Levante graded out with a 48.5. That's including an interception. So, that tells you how bad his day was. It was an uncharacteristically bad day for Levante David. My most impressive, though, I do want to give some Atlanta Falcons their flowers here. Darnell Mooney is one of them. 16 targets in this game for Darnell Mooney. 9 receptions, 105 receiving yards, and 2 touchdowns. Those 16 targets was tied for a career high for Mooney, and the 9 receptions were the third most single-game number of his career. So, Mooney was a monster, including that one of those touchdowns where Kirk threw it to him in like double coverage. If you want, you could also call it triple coverage, and he somehow came down with that bad boy in the end zone. An unbelievable night from Darnell Mooney. So hats off to him. He was the most impressive for me. Who was the most impressive for you?
It has to be Kirk Cousins. I'll give you credit too with Mooney. He's had a resurgent year.
Yep.
Big time. He had a rough year last year.
No doubt.
He's having a big time resurgence. No, it has to be Kirk Cousins. I mean, look. Here's the reality right now with Kirk Cousins and the 3 games that they've won: the Philly game, this game, and the Saints game. They shouldn't have won any of those games. Any of them. And if they had last year's quarterback situation with these 5 games,
they wouldn't have a prayer.
They would be 0-5. No question.
Yeah.
And they're 3-2 and leading the division of 509 passing yards, 83.5 passing grade. That last one there is the big one. 89.4 grade under pressure.
Yep.
For him, a guy who doesn't move much anyway. on a torn Achilles, and who has a history of being one of those guys who's like, hey, just get to him, and he can't throw off platform. And he's 10 for 15 for a $141 and a touchdown under pressure. I mean, look, and Todd Bowles a lot of times brings all the weird looks and the blitzes and everything he brings. He's going to manufacture pressure, but when they got it on Cousins, he got even better in this game. It just spectacular. I mean, this really, I don't think there's any other options here. I mean, he's been everything they've hoped for, even as they're trying to figure out what their offense looks like and figure out the run game and how to balance it and what to give Cousins. But 3 times already in games they should have lost, he's got them to a win. So you can already see within 5 games the value of having him over the guys they had last year.
My most disappointing is Tampa's entire final 2 minutes and even going into overtime for that game. Look, it should have never happened like that, right?
I felt so bad for Bucky Irving too with that fumble.
Yeah,
that game really should have ended right there when he got that first. I felt so bad for him because he's been playing so well.
No, and you're right, and it was tough for Irving with the fumble, but Levante David picks off that football. There's 1:51 left in the game. It should have been over then. Now you have to pick up a first down, but it was a terrible sequence. It was basically worst case scenario on offense where they got themselves out of field goal range and they should have been right in field goal range to ice the game anyways, and that should have been it. And they take themselves out of field goal range because of a penalty, and it was a terrible offensive sequence. Then the punter blasted into the end zone for a touchback. Like that cannot be a touchback at that point. So it was a failure on the offensive side of the football. It was a failure in special teams because you can't blast it in the end zone for a touchback at that point. It's too easy of a chip shot of a punt to be able to precision punt that a lot better than just for it to be a touchback. And then the defensive side of things, obviously allowing them to get into field goal range, allowing them to hit to hit the inside route to be able to get to the point where they can clock it with a second left, kick the field goal. It was just it was bad. And the overtime was what it was, but to get to overtime, it was a complete failure.
At that point, with the momentum,
by all 3 phases of the team,
with the momentum and the way the Bucs have been playing on the back end all day, that it was a pretty fitting ending, really, that it just went like that because it just broke down on them on the back. And they came into this game second in the NFL in coverage grade. And then they had this type of...
And it was a stinker. There's no doubt about it. Your most disappointing, you already talked about Levante David and KJ Britt, so you highlighted them. There you go. That's 14 games. We had 2 less games, so it was 4 teams that were on the bye week, so we had 14 games of this one, 14 up, 14 down. Let us know what you thought in the comments and all of the one-off videos that we've had for your teams. That would be a great way to do that and get involved in the show. Like I said at the top, if you don't have a PFF Plus subscription, now would be a great time to get it because we have also introduced in-game grading. That means that when you watch these games on Sunday, you can see the grades coming up for these teams as they are playing. There's a little bit of a delay. There's like a 10-15 minute delay, but you can see the in-game grading. You could also see them for a little bit of time after the game is over, and then it'll lock as we go through our whole review process, and you'll be able to see them on Monday at noon when we unlock all of those games. So check it out if you don't have the PFF Plus subscription. Now would be a great time to do that. That's Dalton Wasserman. I'm Trevor Sikkema. Thank you guys so much for watching the PFF NFL show. We will see you same time next week.